Story 1.
My attempt at an open marriage spiraled out of control when my husband discovered I had cheated. Hey there. I never imagined I'd reach out to strangers on the internet for advice, but here I am. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, married for 8. We met in college and were each other's first and only partners. I used to think our relationship was special because of that, but now it seems that was just my perspective. A while back, my wife started a new job. Initially, she had a hard time fitting in because she's always been reserved. With some encouragement from me, she made friends with a group of girls. Initially, I was happy about it, but then she started going out for drinks and parties with them. I got worried about her change in behavior and tried talking to her about it, but I didn't want to restrict her. This started affecting our relationship in the bedroom. My wife wasn't one to initiate closeness, and as she continued going out, she either became too tired or wasn't in the mood. At some point, her company got a new manager whom she and her friends liked. She began mentioning him, even pointing out how he handled non-work-related problems. I questioned her about him, and she brushed off my concerns. She even asked if I regretted not having more experience with women, but I said no because she was all I needed. I thought I saw a moment of sadness in her eyes, but she quickly changed the subject. She brought up open marriages to spice up our relationship, which surprised me. My wife was never like that. To be honest, I initially refused, questioning if it had to do with the new manager, but she denied it, saying she felt like she missed out but didn't want to lose me. I warned her it was risky, then reluctantly and naively agreed. We set some rules, mainly not to sleep with another person in our home for a year. My wife went on dates, had one-night stands, and somehow ended up in a relationship with that manager. I, on the other hand, had a few dates but avoided one-night stands because it felt wrong to me. My wife would ask if I was okay, but I didn't really want to change her behavior. At some point, I felt the love I had for her fading, and it was damaging me inside. I went on a date with an amazing woman from South Korea, and we hit it off. The conversation was easy, and she had a quick wit and a smile that was unforgettable. This led to more dates, and eventually we became faithful. I never experienced closeness like that before, and I didn't know a woman could be so giving and make someone feel so desirable. At first, my wife thought it was cute, but as months passed, she questioned my relationship with my new lover. I reminded her that this was her idea, and even though she was in a relationship with the manager, I was concerned about it. She stayed silent, looking like she wanted to say something but held back. She started coming home early, surprising me with dinner and cleaning the house extra. She also came to my workplace to drop off lunch and initiated closeness in the bedroom. If it weren't for her suggestion of an open marriage, I would have been thrilled about all this. I reluctantly gave in to her attempts at closeness, and when I did, it was just to get it over with. Something in me toward my wife died, and I could see she felt it too. I asked what brought about this change in her, and the response was that she wanted to show me love and happiness. I burst out laughing unintentionally. I asked about her friends, the manager lover, or the one-night stands. She didn't respond that day and went to bed in tears. The next day, I came home to find her waiting for me. She admitted the open marriage was a horrible mistake, expressing regret and wanting to focus on us again. I told her to be honest and tell me what inspired all this in the first place. Turns out, her group of friends planted the idea because of their numerous close exploits. When the manager came around, he surprisingly supported that lifestyle and encouraged my wife to live freely. It seems their emotional connection turned physical only after they opened up the marriage. She compared it to being like a drunk driver speeding down the road, exhilarating and intoxicating. However, the consequences of this choice have become too much for her to handle. She now realizes that she didn't need a comparison. What we had was truly unique and special. Unfortunately, she feels like she destroyed our marriage and any chance of a future together. When I told her I might never see her as my wife again, it made her break down in front of me. I simply held her in silence as she cried until she fell asleep in my arms on the couch. She has since quit her job and severed ties with all her friends and her manager. She even expressed her willingness to spend the rest of her life making it up to me, working hard to be seen as a wife again. However, I haven't cut off contact with my lover. Frankly, my lover makes me feel like a man who can take on the world, something my wife hasn't done in a while. The truth is, I don't know what to do in this situation. I'd love to recapture that special feeling, but my lover essentially saved me when I was at my lowest. Please help me. I forgot to mention we have our first marriage counseling session in a couple of hours. I'm uncertain how it will go. I'll post an update on our therapy session as it definitely needs it, but I'll answer some questions first. My lover is not married, but she is in an open marriage. Second, my intention for this marriage is still unclear because despite my love for my wife, I struggle with trusting her. Yet, I can't let go completely because of our years together. I agreed to counseling to figure out if I can reach a clear resolution and get off the indecisive train. Third, I initially didn't ask for her phone because I didn't want to see an actual image of my wife with another man. The mental images and thoughts were bad enough, and to see the actual picture would have shattered me even more. Also this morning, as I got out of the shower, I saw my mother holding my phone, silently shaking as she read a message I had received. I took it from her without saying anything. The message was from my lover saying, "Good morning, handsome. I slept in your t-shirt last night because I miss going to bed and waking up in your arms. I miss greeting the new day with a kiss from you. I think this upset my wife because she has been following me for the past 2 hours, even during my jog. I met my lover on an evening when my wife was on one of her dates. I was coming from a bookstore, and my lover was being strained by a short, beefy man yelling at her. When he grabbed her arm and violently turned her around, I unconsciously stepped in. I practiced judo, but I'm not exceptional. I was able to restrain him and accidentally dislocate his wrist. It turns out she got him fired for aggravation, and he didn't take it well. Afterward, she insisted on buying me coffee as a thank you gesture, and I agreed. Regarding her reaction to the open marriage, she initially hesitated strongly against being a homewrecker. However, after learning the full extent of my wife's actions from me, she decided to take a risk. Update: the therapist was friendly and experienced. She seemed impartial and genuinely eager to help. Even though it was our first session, my wife used it as a chance to share everything. She confessed that her group of friends made her question if she missed out because she committed to her first boyfriend and had no other experiences. She never had the same adventures as some of these supposedly amazing women. Keep in mind, some are divorced but none are married. The therapist highlighted that this could hurt a marriage due to differences in mindset. My wife agreed and added that after the new manager started approaching, some friends encouraged her to explore, saying it was a chance for her to discover herself. She obviously felt guilty, she says, so she never did anything physical until a divorced friend suggested an open marriage as a loophole, saying some couples come out stronger. Regrettably, I agreed, and her so-called adventure began. It was thrilling but lacked real substance, unlike what we built over the years. She started questioning her reasons for doing this. She said she could see the hurt in my eyes but told herself it was an adventure. She thought she had the chance for an amazing experience, so the gravity of it all never occurred, until she noticed a change in me. Initially, she assumed I'd accept her situation and be okay with it because I went on dates. But everything changed when my lover became a constant in my adventures. Apparently, I started smiling for no reason, and my eyes lit up with texts or calls. She felt a pit in her stomach and got many panic attacks for no reason. Seeking advice from friends, they said it was a normal reaction for me to have during the adventure. But when the same divorced friend who suggested this said his lover makes him happy, the reality finally dawned on her. The very real possibility that another woman, not his wife, gave him joy almost made her pass out. She realized how ridiculous this all was and begged them to help her win me back. But they just told her, if she couldn't deal with it, why did she open her marriage in the first place? She knew then and there that these people were toxic and a threat to our marriage and the life we built. Hence, she's been on a mission to win me back by any means necessary. I, on the other hand, didn't share much, but did let the counselor know about the situation on my side, with my lover still in the picture. To which the counselor said no resolution could ever be reached with my lover still in the picture, and suggested we book another appointment after tomorrow. The counselor did say it was unusual for someone to stay with their first this long, and gave the impression that any storm can be weathered. Update: it's been like a scene from Jerry Springer. I've moved into my brother's apartment at an incredibly low cost. I've uncovered some troubling details about my wife's actions and disturbing things about her manager. In our second counseling session, I asked questions from fellow Redditors, including if she was certain nothing physical occurred before we opened the marriage. She avoided eye contact, pleading with me not to make her say it, fearing it would ruin us. After some pushing, she admitted it wasn't physical, but that they engaged in self-touching in front of each other. This guy convinced her it wasn't technically cheating, just appreciating each other's beauty. I was shocked, and she started shaking and hyperventilating, even crying and snot apologizing profusely. Even the counselor was taken aback. At this point, my wife knelt, hugging my legs, expressing deep remorse. I asked what really changed her view of him. She explained his behavior changed when she distanced herself from the group. One evening, she overheard him speaking disrespectfully about her to a male colleague. He boasted about how easy it was to get her, calling her proof that you can't trust quiet ones. When asked if he liked her, he dismissed it as a distraction, emphasizing he had no intention of leaving his fiancée. He pied me but said, "You snooze, you lose," realizing she was just an object to him, coupled with betraying me for a thrill, made her suicidal. She left her workplace, vomited, and begged for forgiveness. I asked if she loved him, and when she admitted it, she claimed she never stopped loving me. She suggested starting anew, just the two of us. But I explained it wouldn't be fair to my lover, and I needed time away. She had a meltdown, sobbing and saying incoherent things, clinging to me as if I might vanish. It took time for both me and the counselor to calm her. The counselor suggested time apart might help us heal. Now I wish I could. End the update with just this, but as we got home I began to pack, and my wife got a video call from her laptop. It was one of her former friends in tears. After my wife resigned, this friend and the manager began their own affair, but apparently she had a pregnancy scare causing him to turn into Dr. Jekyll. To make matters worse, she had a boyfriend she saw a future with, and she only had a fling out of curiosity. Funny how that seems to be a trend. Her boyfriend found out from an email between them discussing the potential pregnancy, but the manager accused her of babysitting him. Of course, he left her, and she contacted my wife, thinking she had saved our marriage and seeking advice. I just turned and left, and I've been staying in the apartment ever since. Update: a lot has occurred as I make decisions about the future. Quite a few significant things happened. The friend who had a pregnancy scare was indeed pregnant, but the stress of losing her boyfriend and facing humiliation from the affair led to her ruin. She reacted strongly, exposing the manager to upper management and his fiancée. I found his fiancée on Facebook. She appears to be the epitome of a charming small-town girl, working as a special needs teacher, a homebody, and very family-focused. My immediate thought was questioning why he'd mess around with other women when he has someone like her at home. Honestly, why men like him end up with women like her is one of life's greatest mysteries. The friend reached out to me, seeking my side of the story for evidence against him, and I agreed to meet in person. Seeing her face, I could tell she was emotionally shattered, with dark circles and red eyes indicating sleepless nights. She thanked me for meeting and apologized for her involvement in my wife's ordeal. It turns out she and my wife spoke, and that's when she learned about my moving out. Without blaming others, she took responsibility, explaining that losing a child and the love of her life changed her to the core. She can barely look in the mirror without feeling disgust, haunted by her ex's face when he found out. This meeting seemed like a form of self-punishment for her self-hatred. She informed me that the manager, due to workplace fraternization and his influential position, might be fired and blacklisted. The same consequences might apply to her, and she accepted it. After hearing my side, she left, and I apologized again. Needing to retrieve some belongings, I went to the old place when I thought my wife wasn't home. Unfortunately, she was there, surrounded by our wedding photos, visibly upset. Seeing me, she tried to hug me and offer lunch, but I declined, explaining that I needed a few things before leaving. She showed me a recent message from her former manager berating her. Apparently, my wife helped her friend expose him to relevant parties, causing his anger. She got the idea from Chump Lady and Marriage Builders, thinking that exposing the secret would weaken its power and give us a chance. I appreciated her courage, but clarified that it didn't change anything between us. I also mentioned stopping marriage counseling for individual counseling. This made her cry, and she understood. Despite expecting elation or rage, I felt numb towards her. Recognizing this abnormality, I decided to address it in individual counseling, not marriage counseling. I also consulted a divorce lawyer on my brother's recommendation for precaution. Currently, I'm not eager to fight for the marriage, and my wife senses it. Her attempt at closeness ended with my refusal, leading to a loud confrontation. I shook my head, explaining that if she still couldn't understand after all that's happened, our marriage's direction is clear. This is my current stance, at least for now. I enjoyed the reason because of its large, roomy lobby, reminiscent of old movie hotels. Standing aside with my sons Bradley and Terry, we waited for my wife, Lauren, to arrive for a Wednesday afternoon date. We had been planning this day for weeks, eager to see how it would unfold. Lauren and I were approaching our silver wedding anniversary next week. We married early and had our boys early, both attending Temple University on scholarships. Despite living in Reading, we rarely ventured to downtown Philadelphia. I hadn't experienced a Radisson before. Working in the legal department of an accounting firm in Reading for the past 10 years, I had a regular weekly meeting with a retirement care contractor in Harrisburg, never canceled or rescheduled. That's likely why Lauren chose Wednesdays for her weekly Ryzen trips, a 2-hour drive from Reading to downtown Philadelphia in terrible traffic, suggesting its importance to her. My suspicions arose about 2 months ago, noticing little things. The company's investigator on retainer willingly took on surveillance work between his regular jobs. It was costly, but I didn't mind. He quickly discovered Lauren was traveling to Philadelphia on Wednesday mornings, meeting a family friend, Kyle Sish, at the Risen Hotel. Lauren always waited for Kyle in the gift shop. When he arrived, he got a room, walked through the lobby to the payphone, placed an envelope under the payphone, and entered the elevator, always on the 8th floor. Lauren would emerge from the gift shop, take the envelope with the room key, and follow him to his floor. They spent about 3 hours there and then parted ways. Kyle used to work for our company, and we socialized with him and his wife, Beth, at various company events. A few months ago, Bradley and Terry spotted Kyle at a job fair, and about 2 weeks ago, they reluctantly revealed the situation when Lauren was away. Dad, if you knew what was happening, why didn't you do anything? Terry, I only found out recently. I'm unsure of what I want. I love your mother, and thinking about life without her is difficult. I wish I had never known. Now that I do, I can't ignore it. Any suggestions? Bradley suggested a radical solution, but I plan on calling Beth to gather more information. It's heartening to see my sons being supportive. They love their mother. 2 days later, I met Beth Sish, who suspected something was wrong but wasn't entirely sure. Beth had caught Kyle in similar situations before, and he promised to change. Armed with enough information about his infidelity, she was ready to file for divorce. She asked me to refrain from taking action while she prepared the papers. This brings us back to today. Lauren entered the hotel lobby right on schedule and walked into the gift shop. She looked beautiful but a little nervous. It seemed like she was putting in extra effort for her weekly date, which stung a bit. Hi guys, are you waiting for me? Beth Sish quietly approached me. Lauren just showed up and is waiting in the gift shop. If all goes according to plan, Kyle should be here soon. Lauren browsed magazines, keeping her eyes on the lobby, searching for her lover. Soon, Kyle walked past the gift shop and approached the counter. I observed Lauren smiling at his arrival. A few minutes later, Kyle exited from behind the counter, stopped at the payphone, and entered the elevator. As soon as the elevator door closed, Terry entered the gift shop. He smiled and greeted his mother with open arms. Lauren seemed worried, and with his arm around her waist, Terry diverted her gaze from the lobby. Beth quickly retrieved the keycard Kyle had hidden and entered the elevator. Kyle was predictable. He always showered before engaging in his faithful activities. Beth planned to wait in the hallway until she was sure he had started. Bradley and I approached Terry and Lauren slowly. What a great surprise. Nice to meet you here, Lauren. Come join me and the boys for lunch. John, why are you here? I thought you were supposed to be in Harrisburg. The meeting got canceled today, so I thought I'd have lunch with the boys. I tried calling you, but you weren't home. I can see why. Why are you here? Lauren seemed upset. I'm meeting Mara Phillips here for lunch. You remember her, right, John? We went to elementary school together. She didn't notice the boys smiling at each other as she came up with this lame excuse. No problem, Lauren. We'll make a reservation for 5 and she can join us. Lauren reluctantly walked with us to the restaurant. She seemed to have no choice. Before sitting down, she pulled out her cell phone. I have to call Mara and let her know things have changed. Put the phone away, honey. The hall isn't that big. I don't think she'll have any trouble finding us. I didn't want my wife calling Kyle while Beth was handling things. Lauren seemed a little nervous as we sat there. The boys were acting a bit subservient, but she didn't notice. Lauren placed her phone on the table next to the silverware, which she usually kept in her purse on the floor near her chair. After the waiter took our drink orders, we all sat in silence, looking at the menu. I frowned slightly when I saw the boys smirking at each other. Are we going to wait for Mara, Lauren? Or are we going to let her order after she arrives? Go ahead and order right now. Mara was a little dubious about making it in time for lunch. She might not show up at all. I figured if she didn't show up, I could still do a little shopping. Poor Lauren was piling one lie on top of another, trying to save face. I felt sorry for her, but I knew she deserved it. The waiter brought our drinks and took our order. Lauren only ordered a fruit salad. Not 15 minutes later, Beth came to the table. She was carrying all of Kyle's clothes and his shoes. Hey Beth, how'd it go? It was really good, thank you, John. My loving husband was in the shower as we expected and didn't even notice I was there. I left the divorce papers on the dresser for him and decided at the last minute to pick up his clothes. Lauren looked very scared. The blush was gone from her face and her eyes started to cloud over. She looked at me, then at Beth, not knowing what to do. Here's the key, Lauren. Thanks for lending it to me. I won't be needing it anymore. Beth carefully placed the keycard next to Lauren's phone. Lauren stared at it with her mouth open. Her cell phone rang. She picked it up and looked at the number without answering the call. She turned the phone off and put it back. Here you go, boys. The Corvette is yours for the rest of the week. It's in my name, so don't worry. Thanks for your help, guys, but I got to run. Have a nice meal. Lauren looked at me like she was begging for help. I didn't offer anything. She didn't even look at the boys when the waiter brought the food. She apologized and went to the ladies' room. The boys and I had already eaten, and Lauren never returned to the table. I had Terry check the restrooms and sent Bradley to the room Kyle had taken. When Lauren left, she left her keycard, cell phone, and purse on the table. 10 minutes later, they both returned to no avail. Bradley said that the hotel had provided Kyle with a tracksuit while they were trying to get him home. Terry checked the ladies' rooms in the hotel restaurant and lobby and found nothing. I asked the restaurant manager to arrange for us to get help from hotel security. There was no indication that anything illegal or criminal had occurred. The security people tried to be as helpful as possible. But the only thing they could find was a security camera that showed Lauren going into the kitchen, not the ladies' room. The other cameras showed nothing. As a precaution, they called the Philadelphia police. Lauren could not be reported missing, but we could file an incident report for future reference if necessary. We waited a few more hours and then decided to go home in case she was there. She left her purse on the table with her credit cards, driver's license, and money. Lauren wasn't home. Epilogue. It's been 2 years since our lunch at Raisin. Terry is now a lieutenant in the Air Force. Bradley is in graduate school in California. Beth and Kyle got divorced. We never saw Lauren again or heard from her. I filed a missing persons report with the Philadelphia police after the required waiting period, but they found nothing. Legally, I'm still married. At some point, I will have to apply to change that status. In the meantime, I live in a big house alone. All of Lauren's clothes and other things are still here, just like she left them. I'm trying to figure out if lunch at Raisin was a good idea or a bad idea. I can't decide.
Story 2.
My husband went alpha, planned revenge for my cheating, and laughed while waving a prenup at me. Alex, who is 36 years old and male, was my college sweetheart. He had those dreamy eyes and a strong, buff physique, and he used to enjoy playfully carrying me around to tease me. We tied the knot in a charming church ceremony and spent a wonderful 10 years together. Our relationship was the talk of the town, and our friends envied us. As a 36-year-old female, I cherished Alex with all my heart, envisioning a future where we grow old together, hand in hand. Alex proved to be an exceptional husband. He consistently showed unwavering dedication to our marriage and family. His loyalty, faithfulness, and reliability were unmatched, and he effortlessly placed my needs and happiness at the forefront. He treated me with respect, kindness, and empathy, making sure I always felt loved and valued. He had a keen ear for my concerns and readily offered his assistance whenever needed. Alex wholeheartedly supported my goals and dreams, offering guidance and help whenever I sought it. He was patient and understanding, making a genuine effort to see things from my perspective. Honesty was his policy, and he maintained open and transparent communication. He didn't keep secrets or withhold important information from me, valuing candid discussions. I took great pride in my choice of husband, appreciating his steadfastness. Although a little extra excitement in the bedroom wouldn't have hurt. One day I crossed paths with a guy named Ethan, a 22-year-old man at a business conference. We immediately hit it off, and I found myself captivated by Ethan's charisma and charm. We swapped numbers and soon started having regular phone conversations and text exchanges. I knew it was wrong to engage with another man this way, but I couldn't resist. Things between Ethan and me quickly escalated. We began meeting in secret, and before I knew it, we were involved in an affair. Guilt consumed me whenever I saw Ethan, but his allure was irresistible. He awakened feelings of vitality and desire in me that I hadn't experienced with Alex in a long time. I was fully aware of the wrongdoing, but I couldn't put an end to it. I found myself ensnared in a web of lies and deceit that occupied my every thought. I loved Alex deeply, but I also had strong feelings for Ethan. Eventually, Alex discovered my affair with Ethan, and it shattered him. He couldn't comprehend why I would do such a thing. I attempted to explain that I was unhappy in our marriage and that Ethan made me feel alive again, but Alex's pain was too overwhelming for him to hear me out. He was only aware of the emotional aspect of our affair. Had he known about the physical aspect, I dread to think how he would have reacted. Alex implored me to end the affair and work on our marriage, but I was torn between my love for him and my feelings for Ethan. Even though I didn't vocalize this internal struggle to him, I didn't want to cause harm, but I found myself at a crossroads. Then one day, while I was out walking, I came across an elderly couple holding hands. They exuded happiness and contentment, which stirred up envy within me. It made me realize that what I had with Alex was truly special, and I didn't want to let it slip away. So I reached out to Alex and asked to meet up. We sat down for a lengthy conversation about our marriage. I mustered the courage to be honest with Alex about how I had been feeling neglected and unhappy, and he listened attentively. He expressed his love for me and a desire to work on our relationship, but he made it clear that I needed to end things with Ethan. It was a difficult choice, but I knew it was the right one. I called Ethan and informed him that it was over between us. Ethan was devastated, but he comprehended my decision. I understood that I had deeply wounded both men, but I was committed to mending my marriage. Over the following months, Alex and I dedicated ourselves to improving our relationship. We sought counseling to enhance our communication skills and rekindled our romance by going on dates and rediscovering the activities we enjoyed together when our relationship first blossomed. It dawned on me that I had taken Alex for granted, and that he was the man I genuinely loved. In due course, Alex forgave me for my affair, and we left the past behind. We grew closer than ever, solidifying my belief that choosing Alex over Ethan was the right path. I learned that the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and that sometimes what we seek is right before our eyes. Alex and I had reached new heights in our relationship. I was accustomed to receiving beautiful bouquets of roses both at my workplace and home, along with sweetly signed cards from him, all displaying his passionate love. Given this perfection, why did I still yearn for Ethan's presence? Thinking of him was forbidden, let alone plotting how to reconnect with him. My willpower was strong, but my physical desires were frail. Against my better judgment, I reached out to Ethan, confessing my love and suggesting a risky rekindling of our secret affair. He admitted missing me too, and our affair reignited with unprecedented passion. Alex remained oblivious to it all. I was careful to cover my tracks, both in the real world and online. His week-long trip to another state was approaching, and I eagerly shared the news with Ethan, anticipating unrestricted time together at my place. The day arrived, and a teary Alex expressed how much he'd miss me. I shed a few tears too, but deep inside, I felt a sense of freedom in being alone. Less than half an hour after his departure, Ethan arrived at our house, his face beaming with anticipation. Without exchanging greetings, he swept me up and began searching for the bedroom. Meanwhile, I heard some noise downstairs but paid it no mind, fully absorbed in my intense encounter with Ethan. However, not even 2 minutes later, Alex stood in the doorway of our bedroom, utterly shocked to find me in our marital bed with another man. He uttered, "How could you? I trusted you, forgave you, and gave you everything. Absolutely everything." That's what Alex shouted as he stormed down the stairs. I was left speechless, hastily wrapping myself in a sheet as I rushed downstairs to explain that things weren't what they seemed, but I couldn't catch up to him. An hour later, he sent a text instructing me to leave his house. I immediately escorted Ethan out and began packing my belongings while trying to figure out where to go. Ultimately, I chose to return to my mother's place. I attempted to reach Alex through countless texts and calls, but he remained unresponsive. A week later, divorce papers arrived at my mother's address. He didn't engage in conversation, offer therapy, or attempt to resolve our issues. Instead, he swiftly pursued a divorce, leaving me to question how much I ever truly mattered to him. To compound the situation, my mother had insisted on a prenuptial agreement, so assets and income acquired during our marriage were held under each other's names. This meant Alex received 80% of our properties, given his significantly higher income. I was left with nearly nothing to my name and no place to call home. I couldn't even claim child support because, despite our numerous efforts, we hadn't been able to conceive. Surviving under these circumstances seemed daunting, and life felt incredibly unjust. Alright, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned, and let's dive in. My wife is 45 years old and I'm 51. We've been married for a quarter century, residing in the Midwest and making a living as farmers. Our family consists of 2 children, an 18-year-old daughter who recently started college and a son who sadly passed away 5 years ago. He would have turned 20 if he were still with us. My journey with my wife began when I started working for her grandparents, fellow farmers who primarily focused on cattle raising and cultivating crops like corn and wheat. Given her parents' separation, she found more happiness living with her grandparents rather than her parents. When she reached 18, she made the choice to move in with her grandparents and contribute to their farm. What sets my wife apart is that she's not your typical woman, and that's one of the things that makes her extraordinary. She possesses beauty with her long blonde hair and keeps herself in great shape. She's unafraid of getting her hands dirty during work, and she takes excellent care of our animals. Her knowledge of farm tools and machinery is extensive. When I first met her 3 decades ago, I was captivated by her, both for her looks and her capabilities. Encountering a small-town girl who was simultaneously tough and attractive was a unique experience. For me, she really enjoyed having fun with the guys who worked for her grandparents on the farm, and everyone really liked her. I was just a country boy who grew up around farms and didn't know much else. My parents were farmers too, but they weren't as successful as my wife's grandparents, who were on a completely different level. When my wife turned 19, we started dating. We had a great working relationship, and it seemed like marriage was just a matter of time. Things were going well, especially because our son had a natural talent for farming, just like both my wife and me. He showed a lot of promise and often took the initiative to handle tasks on the farm without needing guidance. Then a tragic incident happened. One day while driving his truck on I-94, a big 18-wheeler lost control and crashed into his truck. He didn't survive the accident and passed away instantly. The loss we experienced was incredibly heartbreaking. My wife, in particular, struggled profoundly with the pain of our son's absence. After our son's funeral, a significant change occurred in her. It was as if she underwent a complete transformation, becoming almost unrecognizable. This change had a deep impact on various aspects of her life. Her activity and involvement on the farm decreased significantly, and instead, she spent entire days in bed. She began to grapple with an anxiety disorder, causing her to become excessively attached both physically and emotionally. Her level of attachment grew to an intense degree, surpassing what it used to be. I found myself having to make an effort just to leave for work in the mornings, or to attend to our daughter. Her demeanor took on an overwhelmingly negative tone, which was a stark departure from her previous self. It felt like she had become the opposite of the person she was before our son's passing. At night, finding personal space in bed became quite challenging. She had a strong desire to cuddle throughout the night, but her grip was so tight that it made breathing difficult. It felt like being in a tight hold, similar to what you'd experience with a Muay Thai fighter. Even when I thought she was asleep, she continued to cling tightly. She seemed to require kisses every hour or two, a behavior completely unlike her before our son's accident. Our bed life went through significant changes as well. Before, we were moderately active, being intimate around 2 or 3 times a week. However, after our son's passing, that frequency increased dramatically to almost twice or more every day, even when I didn't feel like it. This happened while we were still mourning the loss of our son. What I came to realize was that this intense need for closeness was her way of grieving, a level of clinginess I had never seen in her before. There are times when I don't really feel like engaging in that activity, and I express my hesitation at first. However, she doesn't seem to pay attention to my protests. It seems like she wants it so much that I don't want to upset her by declining. During those moments, it's as if we only do things that interest her, and I don't get a chance to voice my preferences or desires. It's like the focus is solely on what pleases her. It's starting to feel like our intimate moments are becoming more about satisfying her needs and desires. I began to wonder if this act is turning into something I need to do for her to find happiness, as a way for her to cope, rather than an activity we engage in together out of love for each other. She tends to get upset over even the smallest things, causing almost everything to turn into an argument. From time to time, when she emerges from her low spirits, she becomes vocal about the state of the farm and sometimes directs her frustration towards our workers. During that period, there was a 14-year-old boy who used to come to the farm to help us out. His parents had problems with misuse and pills. Since he was frequently around, I brought up the idea of adopting him with my wife, considering his tough situation with neglectful parents. However, she strongly opposed the idea. The young boy continued coming to the farm to assist us, and unexpectedly, my wife began to grow fond of him. She mentioned that he reminded her of our son, which initially worried me, although I didn't dwell on it too much. About a year later, my wife's condition improved, and a significant part of that change was due to the now 15-year-old boy. He and my wife developed a close bond, but I wasn't concerned about it because I knew he was a good and responsible young man. My wife took the initiative in proposing that we officially adopt the boy to have him spend more time with us. Although he was already around quite often, this adoption was meant to formalize things. Once the adoption process was completed, there was a noticeable positive shift in the atmosphere at home. My wife's mood improved significantly. I started to observe that my wife and our adopted son were growing extremely close. They would engage in late-night conversations after I had gone to bed. She often stayed up much later than her usual bedtime, whereas I tended to go to bed early because my days began before sunrise. My mornings started with a trip to the barn to attend to the cattle. This involved ensuring they had enough food and fresh water because their health was a top priority. I also carefully examined them for any signs of illness or injury and administered any necessary medications once I finished looking after the cattle. I moved on to the fields where we grew corn. During planting season, I could be quite busy preparing the soil and planting corn seeds, often with the assistance of my adopted son. When it was the season for corn to grow, my responsibility was to monitor the progress of the corn plants, ensuring they received the appropriate amount of water and nutrients. Sometimes I had to use irrigation to provide proper hydration and apply fertilizers for their nourishment. I also kept a close eye out for any pests or diseases that could harm the corn crop. Depending on the time of year, I might have various tasks to handle. For instance, during harvest time, my adopted son and I, along with some hired hands who were usually close friends of mine, Had to oversee the process of gathering the corn using specialized machinery like combine harvesters to efficiently collect the ripe corn. After collecting the corn, my responsibility extended to ensuring it's properly stored and transported to various destinations as needed, such as for animal feed or sale. Initially, I wasn't concerned about the close relationship between my wife and adopted son, especially since my daughter also spent time with them. 2 years after our son's tragic passing, life appeared to be slowly returning to normal despite the loss. Our son's memory remained alive in my heart, a constant presence in my daily life. Strangely, my wife seemed to have coped in a peculiar manner by developing an unusually strong bond with our adopted son. They would often share hugs and watch TV together under a blanket. Over time, this became a common sight that didn't strike me as unusual. Our intimate life underwent significant changes, dwindling to about once every 2 weeks. It didn't concern me too much, as I felt I was getting too old for frequent bedroom activities. After a long day at work, I often lacked the energy for it. Both my adopted son and I dedicated a substantial part of our days to tending to the cattle and managing the cornfields. However, there were also administrative tasks handled by my wife and daughter, such as keeping track of expenses, maintaining records for both the cattle and the corn, and managing paperwork related to regulations or sales. There was one particular day that aroused my suspicion about my wife's interactions with our adopted son. It happened when I couldn't locate my adopted son and I began searching for him. We had a separate barn area that housed our office, where my wife spent most of her time. I walked in the direction of the office door, as I had a hunch that my adopted son might be inside. Just outside the door, I noticed his dirty shoes, indicating he was likely indoors. The office door had a faulty locking mechanism, preventing it from being locked from the inside. Upon opening the office door, it appeared that I had unexpectedly walked in on something involving my wife and our adopted son. There was a fleeting moment when their expressions conveyed that they were caught off guard. However, at that time, I didn't entertain the possibility of what I thought I had glimpsed. Fast forward 3 years, and our daughter turned 18, heading off to college. This meant that at home, it was primarily just me, our adopted son, and my wife. During the harvest season, we had additional hands assisting on the farm. After a long day's work, it was customary for us to visit a bar for some drinks. However, since my adopted son was not yet 19 and below the legal drinking age, he would typically head inside the house early. As the day was coming to an end, I instructed the other workers to go on without me, explaining that I needed to complete a few remaining tasks. I wished to perform a final check on the cattle to ensure they were settled for the night. After completing this task, I took the necessary time to ensure that all our equipment was correctly stored for the evening. Strangely, I felt compelled to go to the office and inform my wife that I was preparing to depart. This was rather out of character for me, given that it had become our established routine to go out after a hectic day of harvesting. As I turned the doorknob and swung open the door, I could already feel a sense of unease settling in my stomach. I experienced a strange feeling as if something was amiss. When the door opened, I was overwhelmed by a sudden and powerful surge of emotions. It was as though time had slowed down, giving me the opportunity to observe every aspect of the scene that was unfolding in front of me. There, in the midst of it all, was my wife, the person I had always held the greatest trust in, on her knees performing a BJ on our adopted son. My heart raced within my chest as shock and disbelief washed over me like an unexpected wave. My mind struggled to comprehend what I was witnessing, and I was suddenly overwhelmed by a mix of anger, hurt, and a profound sense of betrayal. These emotions swirled together, leaving me feeling almost numb. I couldn't control myself. My hands clenched into fists, and I took deep, heavy breaths. It was as if a surge of energy coursed through me, making me feel somewhat dizzy. For a moment, it felt like I was suspended in time, disconnected from my surroundings. The room seemed hazy at the edges, my focus narrowed to the distressing scene before me. I had an initial urge to shout, to demand an explanation, and to release the turmoil inside me. Yet there was another part of me that wanted to avert my gaze, to deny what my eyes were witnessing, and to cling to the hope that it wasn't real. As the seconds ticked by, it became evident that I couldn't evade confronting the unfolding situation. Understanding washed over me, forcefully snapping me out of my initial state of shock and propelling me into a more determined frame of mind. Tears welled up in my eyes, a mixture of sadness and frustration ready to spill over. My voice trembled as I mustered the courage to speak, my question carrying a sense of openness and vulnerability I hadn't felt in a long time. What's happening? My adopted son couldn't meet my gaze directly, guilt and surprise playing across his face. My wife shifted her attention toward me, her eyes revealing shame, regret, and an unusual hint of defiance. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the irregular rhythm of my own breaths. In that moment, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything had changed. The solid foundation of trust upon which our relationship rested had crumbled, and there was no way to undo it. Betrayal seemed to emanate from both my wife and my adopted son. Anger surged through me as I grabbed him by the neck and forcibly removed him from the room, my wife's screams echoing in my ears as she tried to intervene. My rage was so intense that I had a strong urge to harm him, but I managed to restrain myself. I sternly warned him that if he ever set foot in our house again, there would be consequences. Having said that, I turned away and left behind a whirlwind of intense pain and confusion. In the midst of this overwhelming emotional turmoil, I headed to the bar to be in the company of my friends, hoping to temporarily forget the shocking scene I had just witnessed. At that moment, I had no desire to be alone, even though it was challenging not to dwell on what had transpired. The weight of the situation felt crushing, and the intensity of my emotions was almost too much to bear. At the bar, I attempted to drown out my thoughts, but they proved difficult to escape entirely. The sheer magnitude of it all was simply too immense. The recurring question that echoed in my mind was how long this had been happening. We had adopted him at the age of 14, and he was nearly 19 when I uncovered the truth, but it was impossible to determine the exact duration. Eventually, the noise in my head became overwhelmingly loud, prompting me to decide to head home early. The need to confront my wife and come face to face with the harsh reality of the situation had grown too insistent to ignore. Upon my arrival home, my wife was nowhere to be found, and it was clear that my adopted son had packed his belongings and left as well. It was at this moment that the full weight of the situation hit me, and I could no longer hold back the tears. The enormity of my son's passing and how my wife had spiraled into a destructive path, ultimately leading to the downfall of our family, became painfully evident. I called my daughter and described the troubling scene I had witnessed involving her mother. Surprisingly, she wasn't taken aback by the news. She shared that she had already suspected that something unusual was going on between them, even though she hadn't actually witnessed it. Unlike my daughter, who was ready to confront the situation, my wife exhibited cowardice. She refused to return home for several months and ignored all attempts at communication. When my daughter reached out to her, my wife's initial reaction was to claim it was a mistake. However, she later admitted that her feelings had deepened, and she had developed romantic affection for our adopted son. She expressed her fear about how I would react to this revelation. My daughter informed me that both my wife and our adopted son were staying at an undisclosed hotel, adding to my sense of confusion and disorientation. Despite dedicating my life to managing and operating the farm, I legally owned nothing because my wife had inherited it from her grandparents. The feeling of betrayal was overwhelming. Lost and uncertain, I examined our business accounts and discovered that a significant amount of money had been recently withdrawn. In response, I withdrew the remaining funds and opened a new business account to prevent her from accessing it. The weight of the situation left me deeply conflicted. I had always envisioned retiring on the farm, but now I faced a dilemma. If I were to file for divorce, I understood that I stood to lose everything I had invested in. Despite having enough money saved to support myself until I reached the age of 80, my passion for my work was still strong. I made the decision to consult a divorce lawyer to seek advice on how to proceed with the marriage. The lawyer's counsel was to stay married due to the potential financial losses I might incur if I chose to leave. I hesitated to make our situation public knowledge, considering our limited family connections and the impact it could have on our small community. Throughout this ordeal, my daughter stood by my side, providing unwavering support that meant the world to me. Her presence was reassuring. Then, out of the blue, my wife called me after about 2 months had passed. During the call, she expressed her desire to come back home and offered an apology for her betrayal. She also mentioned undergoing therapy with the intention of mending our marriage. To be honest, I had some troubling thoughts. The urge to divorce her immediately was strong, but the potential losses held me back. The moment when I witnessed her in that situation, all the love and respect I had for her disappeared. My heart seemed to darken, and I even entertained disturbing thoughts of harming her to gain control of everything. The idea of having her back was almost unbearable, but for the memory and sake of my late son, I consciously pushed those dark thoughts away. At present, my plan is to allow my wife to return, but things have changed significantly since I caught her. I've devised a plan to acquire my own piece of land and establish my own cattle herd. Since the passing of my son, her attention has shifted away from the business, and I've taken on the role of driving its operations. I'm the one who comprehends the intricate logistics, maintains customer relationships, and manages the supply chain. While she has played a part, I've essentially been accumulating wealth for her. Now, my focus is turning toward my own well-being. I'm actively working on launching my independent ventures over the next couple of years. My aim is to create something free from her influence. Ultimately, I'm preparing myself for the possibility of divorce by that time, if she is still alive. This decision revolves around my own future and finding a way to move forward independently. So folks, what's your opinion on this? Do you believe this gentleman should compromise his dignity to retain his farm, or should he contemplate divorce, risking the loss of everything? Hello, my life is in complete disarray, and I have no one to turn to for help except you, fellow internet users. Let me provide you with some context. Just over a month ago, my husband, Troy, 31 years old, decided to host a wine and dine event with our circle of friends to mark our 3rd anniversary. I wasn't entirely convinced it was a good idea, but he was determined to throw a party to celebrate us. It might sound peculiar, but at that moment all I could think about was whether his best friend would attend. During a previous night when we were all out together, he kept giving me suggestive glances while dancing at the club. He even signaled for me to join him on the dance floor while Troy was in the restroom dealing with a stomachache. I did decline his dance invitation, but we had all consumed a bit too much alcohol, and he appeared quite attractive with his shirt unbuttoned all the way down. In that instant, I felt a shift in our relationship. I wasn't sure how I would feel when I saw him at the party. I hadn't encountered him since that night, and a few weeks had passed. I wanted to address the moments that had transpired between us and move past them. I guess a little background is in order. Troy's best friend, Mitch, 34 years old, has been friends with him for 20 years, and I've known Mitch for as long as I've known Troy. However, for the first 2 years of my relationship with my husband, Mitch and I were just platonic friends. But after we got married, it seemed like Mitch was afraid of losing his best friend to marriage. He started accompanying us on almost all our trips and frequently brought along various women since he didn't want to commit to. 1. My feelings for him remained strictly as a friend, but everything changed after that night at the club. On that particular evening, Troy made a heartfelt toast, expressing his love for me and his excitement about having children together. I was overwhelmed with embarrassment and excused myself to the guest bathroom to compose myself. As I was about to leave the bathroom, Mitch followed me in, and what transpired next wasn't something I had planned for. The pleasure was so intense that I couldn't control myself. The thrill of knowing that everyone else was outside while we were engaged in an intimate encounter inside, trying to remain discreet, was oddly exciting. It continued for another 15 minutes until I heard a knock on the door, followed by Troy calling my name. Instantly, guilt washed over me. I pushed Mitch away and pretended I was fixing my appearance. A couple of minutes later, I left the bathroom with him following me. About 30 minutes afterward, we made sure Troy didn't suspect anything. The most troubling aspect of this whole situation is that it wasn't a one-time occurrence. 2 days ago, a week after the party, Mitch came over while Troy was at the gym late. We engaged in an intimate encounter, and it was in the middle of it that I heard Troy entering the room and catching us in the act. My husband had a complete breakdown right in front of us while we were lying in our bed naked, desperately trying to cover ourselves. It was a horrifying sight. However, he quickly regained his composure and became very angry. Troy physically confronted Mitch and forcefully ejected him from the house at 1:00 a.m., completely nude, in the freezing -5 weather. Then he turned to me and informed me that I'd be spending the night on the couch. He gathered my belongings on the spot and tossed them out into the living room. I didn't have much of a choice and spent a restless 2 days on the couch, only to receive a text from him 48 hours later with a link that contained a PDF of a plane ticket and a letter. I opened the plane ticket and it had my details on it, showing a flight from New York to Orlando a week from today. I couldn't believe that I had jeopardized a relationship that I had built over 5 years, with 3 of those years being married, for a mere 5-minute indiscretion. What should I do? I still have a week to try and mend things, as I can't go back to live with my grandparents. I can't confide in anyone about this, which is why I'm seeking your advice. Please help me out. Update: I've attempted to communicate with him, but he's isolating himself in the room. He's not going to work, not emerging to have meals. It's been 36 hours since I received the plane ticket, and during this time, I haven't had a meal or slept. I haven't even changed my clothes because I don't want to create a mess in the living room. I'm feeling helpless. I knocked on his door throughout the night, but he didn't respond. All I could hear was the TV playing inside. Finally, he came out and stood at the doorway of the living room. I inquired if he had eaten anything, and I mentioned that I had prepared 2 sandwiches for him to eat. He regarded them as if they were repulsive, and then returned to his room without uttering a word. Update: I awoke realizing it was the day before my scheduled flight. On the coffee table, I noticed bags filled with new clothes and an envelope. Curiosity led me to open one of the bags, and inside I found the remainder of my belongings, even my miniature collection. Tears welled up in my eyes as the reality of the situation hit me. He hasn't uttered a word to me, and he's been returning home late. I've been cooking for both of us, but I end up eating alone. I often wake up to the sound of him coming home, only to see him head straight to his room. We haven't had any conversations at all. It's astonishing how everything is unraveling so abruptly. I just wish I could comprehend what's going on in his mind. Is he contemplating divorce? I pray that's not the case, because it would be a devastating blow from which I fear I might never recover. It's been a month since I had to leave our shared home and move in with my grandparents. He still hasn't communicated with me. I've sent him over 500 texts, but I'm deeply concerned about his well-being. He has blocked me on all platforms. However, a friend he still follows on Instagram mentioned that he posts stories of himself hiking with his work friends. This eases my worries about his safety. Today, I received a large envelope, and upon opening it, I discovered the divorce papers I had been dreading, along with a letter. I haven't read the letter yet, nor have I signed the divorce papers. Edit, I've read the letter. It was heart-wrenching. I couldn't bring myself to continue reading beyond the first page. In it, he poured out his feelings about the entire situation, expressing his deep love for me and our life together. The letter spanned 3 pages, but I couldn't bear to go beyond the first page. I completed reading the letter. In it, he mentioned that he would be taking time off from work to prioritize his well-being, and that he intends to block me on all platforms. He also mentioned that I should sign the divorce papers and send them back to our address. However, I don't want to do that. I just want him back. I feel terrible for being with someone else other than my husband. It wasn't supposed to happen. I blame myself for this situation, and I genuinely can't imagine my life without him. It has been 4 days since I received the divorce papers, and I have signed them.
Story 3.
Laying down ceramic tiles, each measuring 4x4 inches, in a 10x12 kitchen demanded considerable effort. Ronnie Jackson meticulously applied adhesive to each tile before carefully aligning it with the previous one. Ensuring proper alignment, he nodded in satisfaction, recognizing that even minor deviations in millimeters could jeopardize the project's success. Given Eccles' renovation and remodeling's commitment to 100% satisfaction, Ronnie ensured every tile was flawlessly installed before proceeding. Sensing the completion of a row, Charlotte, Ronnie's wife, contacted Eccles on Ronnie's behalf. Answering the call, Ronnie prepared to begin the next row, already reaching for the box of tiles. The days when Charlotte greeted him warmly were gone. Her inquiries had become curt and impatient. Charlotte asked when he would be done. Ronnie assessed his progress and estimated it would take him about 3 hours in Pritchard's kitchen. After hearing his response, Charlotte ended the call abruptly, leaving Ronnie feeling pressured to hurry up. Despite his eagerness to finish quickly, Ronnie compelled himself to work with deliberate precision. Amidst his tasks, thoughts of his wife, with whom he had shared over 2 decades, lingered. Ronnie's acquaintance with Charlotte began at Eccles' renovation and remodeling, where he first encountered her during his early days on the job. As Charlotte entered John Eccles' office, apologizing for her academic shortcomings at John W. Dawson High School, Ronnie observed her stout figure and long, wavy hair. Though distracted momentarily, he refocused on the array of hand tools in John's shed, only to be reminded sharply by John that Charlotte was his daughter. "Yes, sir," Ronnie responded, resisting the impulse to shrug apathetically. Sensing her father's reluctance for her to engage with his new employee, Charlotte adopted a habit of smiling flirtatiously and greeting Ronnie whenever they crossed paths. Ronnie remained courteous towards her, but didn't encourage her attention. "You understand, right?" John admonished Ronnie. "I don't want you chasing after my daughter, got it?" "I'm not pursuing your daughter," Ronnie replied honestly. In truth, 21-year-old Ronnie found 17-year-old Charlotte Rayner Eccles nothing more than a nuisance. She carried at least 50 extra pounds, struggled with severe acne, and possessed qualities that Ronnie found particularly unattractive. Additionally, he considered Charlotte to be quite immature. "Hey, Ronnie," Charlotte said coyly one day as Ronnie and another Eccles employee were unloading their equipment after a long day. "Uh-huh," Ronnie said, struggling with an unopened bag of quick-drying cement. "Listen, I turn 18 on Saturday." Charlotte leaned forward, granting Ronnie an unhindered sight of her blouse's front. "That looks nice," Ronnie remarked. "Happy birthday," another coworker chimed in with a smile. "So, Ronnie, what's my birthday present?" Charlotte playfully inquired. Close your eyes," Ronnie proposed, dragging his bag to the pickup truck's rear door. "Sure thing," Charlotte giggled. "What do you see?" Ronnie asked, tossing his bag into the vehicle. Nothing," Charlotte replied. "This is your gift. Happy birthday," Ronnie announced, dragging the bag of cement towards the barn. Lois Ackles compelled John Ackles to invite Ronnie Jackson to their home for Charlotte's birthday celebration. A medical store in Dolans, Utah sold Ronnie a lovely birthday card, while a pawn shop in Fairway, Utah provided him with a beautiful silver bracelet for $20. Lois pressured John into asking Ronnie to escort Charlotte to the prom. Despite wincing at Charlotte's appearance in a tight sleeveless dress, Ronnie courteously accompanied her, posing for photos, dancing with her, and escorting her home with a goodnight kiss. Days later, John reprimanded Ronnie for Charlotte's heartbreak due to his failure to call her. Despite his reluctance, Ronnie contacted Charlotte and asked her out, leading to subsequent dates. On the fifth date, Charlotte gave Ronnie her pureness. Tracy Lois Jackson was born 5 months after their wedding, and for the subsequent decade, Ronnie Jackson endured the least desirable assignments at Eccles Renovations and Remodeling. Ronnie was convinced that on some occasions, John Eccles deliberately secured jobs for Eccles Renovation and Remodeling just to burden his son-in-law with arduous tasks. Throughout the first 16 years of their marriage, Charlotte Jackson proved to be a devoted wife, striving to understand her husband's preferences and dislikes, mastering his favorite dishes, and observing silence on Sundays during Denver Broncos games. Charlotte also made efforts to lose weight, albeit with fluctuating success. Her skin improved somewhat, but acne scars remained visible, even with the aid of cosmetics. Despite these challenges, when Tracy attended Grover Cleveland Elementary School, Charlotte secured employment at the Garland County Public Library. Despite its modest pay, the comprehensive benefits, including health and dental insurance, made it a valuable opportunity. Right after commemorating their 16th wedding anniversary, Charlotte's cousin Darlene relocated to Dolans, Utah with her third or fourth husband in tow, their whereabouts a mystery. Darlene's boisterous, crude nature was matched by her husband Gary, who was no better, particularly since he was an ardent Dallas Cowboys fan. Unfortunately, Darlene's negative influence rubbed off on Charlotte, who became loud, brash, and prone to complaints, neglecting household duties, including cooking. Despite this, Ronnie, skilled in the kitchen and cleaning, didn't mind the extra workload. However, what was initially occasional slack turned into a nightly occurrence, as Charlotte, Darlene, and Gary often found activities outside the Jackson house. Meanwhile, Tracy learned household chores and sewing buttons on her school uniform, harboring resentment toward her father for her mother's neglect, rather than directing it at her mother. Ronnie's timing was almost impeccable. 3 hours after Charlotte's call, he completed the threshold installation. Struggling with stiffness in his back, Ronnie pondered his age while gathering tools and remaining tiles from the Pritchard house. Contacting Joan Eccles, Ronnie winced at the man's slurred speech, a result of a near-fatal blow that left him recovering slowly. John suffered a massive stroke shortly after his wife Lois disclosed her breast cancer diagnosis. Despite Lois's double mastectomy and radiation treatment, she remained burdened with caring for her husband, Dennis Eccles, aided by their sons Brian and Paul, along with Ronnie's assistance when necessary. Charlotte, the family's sole daughter, remained her mother's constant companion, driving her to Fairway Hospital and offering comfort during her moments of pain. Despite Lois's passing, John appeared reluctant to let go of life. Daily, he was wheeled into the office, cursing his useless left hand as he attempted to type on his computer keyboard. Afterwards, Dennis, Brian, or Paul would drive John home. Ronnie informed John over the phone that he was leaving Pritchard's job, and it was finished. John responded with grunts, barks, and wheezes. Back home, Ronnie savored the aroma of his favorite meal: pork chops, mashed potatoes, and French-cut green beans. After John suffered a debilitating stroke, Charlotte put the Jackson family on a heart-healthy diet. Despite losing 40 pounds on the diet, Charlotte remained overweight. Ronnie accused Tracy of going to Brigham Young University solely to avoid Charlotte's bland cooking, a claim Tracy didn't dispute. While Charlotte was busy at the stove, Ronnie leaned in for a kiss, but she waved him away and pinched her nose. Ronnie tossed his clothes into the hamper and washed away the sweat from his tired body. This work was tough enough when he was 21, and at 43, it strained his capabilities and didn't benefit his health. However, Dennis, Brian, and Paul paid no heed to his struggles. With mounting medical bills from John Eccles' rehabilitation, they claimed there was no money in the budget to hire help. Drying himself off, Ronnie ignored the reflection of a fit man in the foggy mirror. Clad in a t-shirt and shorts, he went downstairs just as Charlotte was setting his plate. "For dessert, we've got hot apple pie," Charlotte announced, placing a frosted mug and a can of beer before him. "Oh my God," Ronnie exclaimed inwardly, feeling bile rise in his stomach. He recalled the last time Charlotte served him frosted beer, enjoying it on her 35th birthday, months before their 17th anniversary. As Tracy was out with friends, Charlotte poured Ronnie a beer in a frosted mug. He savored the taste of the cold drink until Charlotte interrupted, saying, "Darling, there's something I need to talk to you about." Ronnie remained silent as Charlotte spoke at length about nothing in particular. Eventually, Ronnie urged her to get to the point, as his beer was almost finished. Charlotte then revealed that Darlene and Gary weren't exclusive. They had an open marriage. She then asked Ronnie if he had ever considered being unfaithful. "Indeed, I am a man," Ronnie affirmed. "I was eyeing that girl Shelley at the gas station," he confessed. Charlotte retorted, "Shelley from the gas station? As if you'd ever stand a chance." "But I'm married," Ronnie added. "Sure, I think about it, but that's where it ends." "Did you think I'd take it further?" Charlotte pressed on. "Did you believe you could act without facing consequences?" "I can't, Charlotte," Ronnie stated. "We're married. We made vows before our family and friends." Finishing his drink, Ronnie got up, cleaned his mug, and said, "We pledge to be faithful, to forsake all others, including Shelley from the gas station." "We could renew our vows," Charlotte proposed. "No new vows?" Ronnie replied firmly, placing the clean mug in the cabinet. "Our original vows suffice. While Darlene and Gary may have an open marriage, we don't and never will." "But," Charlotte began. "No buts. End of discussion," Ronnie cut in, exiting the kitchen. Ronnie hoped that was the end of it. However, Charlotte revisited the topic twice more. Each time, Ronnie firmly declined. "But honey," Charlotte persisted, "it's a testament to our love. We trust each other enough for this." Annoyed, Ronnie retorted, "Do you even hear the nonsense you're saying? If you think I should let you cheat to prove my love, maybe I don't love you." Frustrated, when Charlotte mentioned an open marriage for the 4th time, Ronnie called her father. Charlotte watched the phone ring. "Hello, John. How are you?" Ronnie greeted. Charlotte's expression turned pale, realizing Ronnie was speaking to her father. Adding to her unease, Ronnie asked for Lois. "Hey, Lois, Charlotte has something to share with you," Ronnie conveyed. "Charlotte, tell your mom about what Darlene told you." Reluctantly, Charlotte took the phone from Ronnie. As she tried to stand from the table, Ronnie, foreseeing her move, firmly restrained her. Feeling cornered, Charlotte rambled incoherently and eventually ended the call. "You're despicable," she snapped at Ronnie. "Listen, Charlotte," Ronnie warned. "Mention this open marriage idea again, and our marriage will end. We'll get divorced." Charlotte never raised the topic again. Relieved, Ronnie noticed Darlene and Gary's efforts to reach out diminished. The pair, labeled the Toxic Twins by Ronnie, visited less frequently. Fast forward 5 years, Ronnie observed Charlotte pouring his beer, nearly overflowing with foam. She wasn't adept at it. "I'll be 40 next Tuesday," Charlotte began as Ronnie tasted his pork chop. "Yes," he acknowledged, swallowing. "And I was a Vestal when we met," Charlotte added. "Turning 40 and being a Vestal," Ronnie remarked, taking another bite. "The big 40, Charlotte emphasized. "During all this time, I've only been with one man, luckily for you," Ronnie quipped. "You've been with what, at least 10 women?" Kid Charlotte queried. "Is that fair?" "Life isn't always fair," Ronnie responded, sipping his beer. "Considering my upcoming birthday and all I've done for you, Tracy, and my parents, I think I deserve some freedom. Darlene and I are heading to Las Vegas next week. She found a good deal at a casino," Charlotte shared. Ronnie continued eating and drinking. "While there, we might meet some guys," Charlotte proposed. "Not necessarily for anything serious, just a date. Let me see what it's like with someone else. It might make me value what I have even more," she said. "The sauce is almost perfect," Ronnie commented. "What's your take?" Charlotte inquired. "I've told you. The sauce is nearly spot on," Ronnie responded. "Charlotte, this is about me branching out, gaining experience," Charlotte retorted. "So, you're suggesting I'm being unfaithful?" Ronnie questioned. "I've made up my mind," Charlotte asserted. "You can either support me or opt for a divorce. Your choice." "I'll initiate the divorce," Ronnie stated. "Do we have any ice cream for this pie?" "Hold on, Charlotte. Divorces cost a fortune. We can't just brush that aside," Ronnie exclaimed, surprised. "What's there to discuss? You've clearly decided everything. You and your dubious cousin are heading to Vegas. You're not asking. You've already chosen Vegas. Forget our massive pile of bills here. You're off to Vegas for your Big 4 celebration. And while you're at it, maybe a date? Even though you're married, you think that's okay? I either support your plan or face divorce, Ronnie said, pushing his empty plate away. Does this pie come with ice cream? It's just for 1 week, Charlotte defended. A week, a day, a minute. It doesn't change anything, Charlotte, Ronnie responded, slicing a piece of pie. Infidelity is infidelity, and I won't be married to a cheater. So, no ice cream. Maybe you can take Darlene, Charlotte proposed. Absolutely not, Ronnie chuckled. Charlotte, I wouldn't be with Darlene if she were the last person on earth. Ronnie tasted the pie, frowned in distaste, and said, Oh, wonderful. You used that aspartame stuff, didn't you? Pushing his plate away. Standing up, Ronnie wiped his mouth, exiting the kitchen. I'm seeing a lawyer tomorrow to start the divorce process, Ronnie declared, heading upstairs. Pritchard's job was done, and Dennis wasn't planning anything until he got the green light to rebuild the federal savings and loan. But Ronnie... You never listen, Charlotte interjected. Sure, Ronnie yelled from downstairs. You never heard me. I told you the consequences if you brought this up again. We're getting divorced. In their third bedroom turned home office, Ronnie powered up the computer. Though outdated, it still functioned and had internet access. After entering a search, Ronnie began looking for lawyers. He found Penny Barnes's online form and completed it. Shortly after, he received a call confirming an appointment with Penny Barnes. The next morning at 10, after Charlotte cleaned the kitchen, she went upstairs. Undressing, she got into bed undressed. When Charlotte pressed against him, Ronnie pulled away. No thanks, he said, turning away. Good night. Ronnie woke up at his regular time, 5:30 in the morning. Even though he didn't have work, he still rose at his customary hour. Quietly, he left the bed and softly closed their bedroom door. Descending to the kitchen, he brewed coffee and checked his email on his cell phone. An email from Penny Barnes's office detailed what he should bring to the 7 o'clock meeting. Ronnie debated having a second cup of coffee. Hearing Charlotte moving around upstairs, he chose not to make coffee for her. If she wanted some, she could make it herself. No, I told him, give it to me. Charlotte's voice came from her cell phone as she descended the stairs. Spotting Ronnie calmly reading news on his phone, she let out a shriek. She quickly ended her call and pocketed her phone. Ronnie, what are you doing here? Charlotte inquired. I mentioned Dennis hasn't received approval to start rebuilding the federal savings and loan, so I'm free today, Ronnie replied. The grass is too damp to mow, so I caught up on today's news. Did you hear Burns & Burns is considering a second location? You could have saved me some coffee, Charlotte complained. You can ask Darlene to make you some, Ronnie replied, placing his cup in the sink. Penny Barnes, an attractive brunette, wore glasses that Ronnie suspected were just for show, to appear more intellectual and serious. Penny remarked, examining their financial documents. You recently refinanced at 3.9%? My daughter's in her final year, Ronnie explained. Plus, my in-laws had hefty medical bills. Their deductibles were sky high, then funeral costs. And Eccles was nearly bankrupt. A couple of projects went over budget because Paul failed to time the orders right. Yes, Penny nodded, reading on. So, Mr. Jackson, how will divorcing your employer's daughter impact your job? I plan to end the relationship, Ronnie responded, a hint of a smile appearing. But Mrs. Jackson's position at the Garland County Public Library shouldn't be jeopardized, Penny speculated. By Friday, Dennis still hadn't gotten the go-ahead for the federal savings and loan renovations. Ronnie was at home completing renovations when Charlotte called. What's this? What kind of scam? Charlotte yelled as Ronnie picked up. Oh, you have the documents, Ronnie remarked. What's the issue with the first-floor bathroom? You mentioned something needs fixing, but honestly, I can't figure out the problem, Ronnie asked. The lock is sticking, Charlotte replied. We'll need to discuss this when I get home, all right? No, we've already had that discussion. Talking hasn't helped, especially when you seem more inclined to heed Darlene over your own husband. So I'm done talking, Ronnie stated firmly. All right, I see what's going on. Got it. Goodbye. But I don't want a divorce, Charlotte lamented. And I don't want to be married to an unfaithful person, Ronnie shot back. Anything else? No. Goodbye then. Ronnie declined Charlotte's subsequent call. When John's number flashed on the screen, Ronnie set down his screwdriver and answered. Hello? Ronnie greeted. John erupted with a mix of frustrated sounds and exclamations. Ronnie was surprised at the range of swear words he could discern as his father-in-law pressed for details about Ronnie and Charlotte. It's pretty straightforward, sir, Ronnie began. Darlene and her spouse practice an open marriage, and they influenced Charlotte to consider it too. I made it clear I'm not interested in that. Amidst another emotional outburst from John, Ronnie continued, "Your daughter gave me an ultimatum last night, accept it or divorce. So, I chose divorce." John attempted to argue further, even resorting to emotional manipulation. "Sir, I appreciate your concern," Ronnie fibbed. "But with 3 sons and a daughter, this issue should be handled by them, not me. Besides, why would I want a business that's been losing money for 3 years?" Ronnie muttered to himself. Charlotte returned home with reinforcements. Ronnie anticipated this and remained silent as Darlene and Gary voiced their perspectives. "You see, Ronnie, since we're secure in our marriage," Gary smirked, "Darlene can maintain friendships outside of it. I mean, as long as she returns to me, right?" Darlene added. "And we share everything. No secrets. It's brought us closer." "Well, that certainly brings clarity," Ronnie remarked. Charlotte, Darlene, and Gary smiled in response. "Actually," Ronnie corrected, rising from the couch, "after our divorce, Charlotte, feel free to share your life and inner world with whomever you choose." "Oh, what's this?" Gary smirked. "So just because you feel inadequate, Charlotte should suppress her own talents and desires?" Ronnie flashed a grin, revealing all his teeth. He then strolled to the living room exit, facing the stairs. "If believing that makes you feel better, go right ahead," Ronnie said, departing the room once more. That night, Charlotte attempted to initiate closeness. "Rest up, Charlotte. You've got a busy day ahead, don't you?" Ronnie said with a grin. As was his routine, Ronnie woke at 5:30 and left the bed. He no longer concerned himself with closing their bedroom door, indifferent to whether his early movements disturbed Charlotte. Descending the stairs, he brewed coffee, sipped it while perusing the news on his phone, and found himself scoffing at national headlines. These politicians really should live by their own standards. Lifetime perks? Forget it. Try living on Social Security. Private health care? Nope. Here's the same insurance they've mandated for everyone else. At 11, Gary knocked on the door. Ronnie answered, and Gary attempted to enter. Ronnie's firm hand halted Gary's eager advance. "What's up?" Ronnie inquired. "I'm here to pick up Charlotte for the airport," Gary explained, making another attempt to enter. "I'll inform her you're here," Ronnie said, nudging Gary back and shutting the door, returning to his recorded sitcom. Shortly after, Charlotte descended the stairs with her suitcase. "Why didn't you tell me Gary and Darlene were waiting outside?" she demanded of Ronnie. "Oh, right. Gary and Darlene are here," Ronnie replied, refocusing on his show. "Seriously? Must you act so immaturely?" Charlotte exclaimed. As she leaned in towards Ronnie, he sidestepped, leaving her to kiss the empty air. "We'll discuss this when I return," Charlotte stated. "No, we won't be doing that," Ronnie responded. After watching his sitcom and enjoying a satisfying meal, Ronnie finished his tasks by painting the front door a pale yellow. It complemented the house's red brick exterior beautifully. He chuckled when their cat, Samson, meowed from the garage. Samson was well provided for with food, water, and a clean litter box. "I'll let you out once the paint dries, buddy," Ronnie assured the cat. Upstairs, he canceled their shared credit cards. He wasn't aware of any cards Charlotte had separately and had no intention of supporting her indiscretions or her cousin's lavish lifestyle. He accessed Charlotte's personal bank account and withdrew half the balance. Similarly, he withdrew half from their joint account, from which he was the sole contributor. Utilizing the bank's website, he opened a new account solely in his name and transferred the withdrawn funds there. Online services facilitated the removal of his name from utilities and cable TV. He shrugged off an email from Garland County Power and Light, stating the cancellation would occur at the billing cycle's end. "Doesn't matter," Ronnie commented to the screen. "Time for Sloan's Pizza," Ronnie thought as his stomach rumbled. "Charlotte never let me eat there. Maybe I'll drop dead from a heart attack." He ordered pizza and a draft beer. He flirted with the waitress, even though she was significantly overweight. She smiled, tapping his wedding ring with her long nail. Ronnie glanced at the ring, his mood souring. He thanked her, left a tip in his truck, and departed. After considerable effort, Ronnie removed the ring, placing it in the console cup holder. "Forever love, huh, Charlotte?" he mused aloud. "Guess that ended today." His truck signaled low fuel. At the gas station, he initially chose $10 worth, but decided to fill the tank completely. "Filling 22 gallons sure takes time," Ronnie commented as the pump continued to gurgle. He visited a nearby convenience store and found Budweiser beer. While walking past another set of refrigerators, he noticed containers of ice cream. He picked up a pint of strawberry ice cream and brought both items to the counter. Shelley was no longer working there. She had gotten married, much to the disappointment of Ronnie and many other men who frequented that gas station just to see her behind the counter. However, Shannon Carlisle, a petite brunette now working there, was almost as attractive as Shelley. Ronnie grinned as Shannon stepped onto a milk crate she had placed by the cash register. On a previous occasion, he had asked her height, to which she sharply responded, "I'm 4 feet 8 inches tall." "How short are you?" Ronnie quipped. Her eyes widened momentarily, then she burst into hearty laughter, brightening her already pretty face. From then on, she affectionately referred to Ronnie as Shorty. "Your wife out of town, Shorty?" Shannon inquired, observing his purchases. "My wife is gone for good," Ronnie replied. Shannon glanced at Ronnie's left hand, then met his eyes. After studying his face briefly, she asked, "So where are you taking me on our first date?" Brushing her thick brown hair back with her hand. "Shannon, as lovely as you are, why would you want to date an old guy like me?" Ronnie questioned. "That's about 7 inches," Shannon remarked, bagging Ronnie's items. Charlotte's 40th birthday was on Tuesday. On Wednesday, their daughter Tracy called Ronnie. "Eckley's renovation and remodeling," Ronnie answered. "Dad, yesterday was Mom's birthday," Tracy informed him. "Yeah, so?" Ronnie responded, scratching his stubbled face. "Why didn't you call her?" Tracy pressed. "I didn't want this," Ronnie sighed. "I just didn't, kiddo." "Why?" Tracy persisted. "You'll understand soon," Ronnie replied. "Your mother believes that now that she's 40, she should be with other men." "What?" Tracy exclaimed. "What do they teach you in school?" Ronnie retorted. "She's married. Married women don't date other men," Tracy clarified. "Oh, that's so old-fashioned," Tracy laughed. "Goodbye, Tracy," Ronnie said, ending the call. 10 minutes later, Charlotte's number appeared on Ronnie's phone. Despite recognizing the caller, he answered, "Eckley's renovation and remodeling." "Hi, Ronnie," Charlotte greeted firmly. "So, how's being a 40-year-old?" Ronnie quipped. "This isn't a joke, Ronnie," Charlotte snapped. "I agree, it's not funny," Ronnie conceded. "And thanks for canceling the credit cards," Charlotte added. "You're welcome," Ronnie responded. "Anything else?" "My birthday was yesterday," Charlotte mentioned. "Why didn't you call?" Ronnie questioned. "I didn't want this. Maybe whoever you're with would have wished you," Ronnie suggested. "Grow up, Ronnie," Charlotte retorted. "Really, Charlotte? Adults honor their commitments and respect their vows," Ronnie stated. "Who's Melissa Kalick?" Charlotte inquired. "Remember Melissa Strome? She married Lucy Kalick, the bank manager," Ronnie clarified. "Regardless, she's employed at Gold Standard Real Estate now. I've got this adorable redhead. She's as charming as can be. On the bright side, she believes she can quickly find a buyer for our house," Ronnie shared. "Buyer? Ronnie, we aren't selling the house," Charlotte exclaimed over the phone. "Can you really afford to surprise me like this? We have to settle the second mortgage, as Melissa informed me. She might find a buyer, but we'll likely need to bring cash to clear that mortgage," Ronnie replied. "We're not selling the house," Charlotte reiterated loudly. "I've stored all your furniture at the EZ warehouse on Independence Road, next to Chevrolet Place," Ronnie added. "Unit 212. Your dad has the key." "Oh, Lord, Ronnie, I need to get home." Charlotte's voice was filled with distress. "Your dad couldn't fetch Samson, so I took him to Dennis's," Ronnie continued. "Dennis? Oh, God, Dennis has those Dobermans," Charlotte exclaimed in terror. Shoot, I didn't consider that," Ronnie chuckled. "No wonder he was keen on adopting that cat." Ignoring his wife's pleas, Ronnie ended the call. Leaving the phone on the kitchen counter, he headed upstairs to surf the internet. He heard his cell phone ring, but chose to ignore it. "And maybe your mom's new boyfriend can cover his final school year," Ronnie muttered. "Why don't you check for a scholarship for students with a GPA of 2.1? Because with that attitude, it's tough to expect your dad to finance your education," he retorted. After shutting down the computer, Ronnie shaved, removing 3 days of stubble carefully. He then took a hot shower, got dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. The computer was in the pickup truck's cab, behind the passenger seat. As his final act, Ronnie discarded his cell phone in the trash and wheeled the trash can to the curb. "Going to miss you," Herman Vogart, a neighbor, greeted Ronnie on the street. "Vogart, you won't do this," Ronnie laughed, shaking Herman's hand. "The most we spoke was when you griped about Tracy's boys blasting their music. It's tough getting neighbors to give you space." "Ah, man," Herman sighed. "You were the ideal neighbor. Never borrowed stuff, never asked me to feed your cat or collect your mail during vacations. I bet the next folks will be all over me." "You brought it on yourself being so friendly," Ronnie remarked. "The trash can's ringing," Herman pointed out. "Mind your business. It's probably some critter," Ronnie smirked, shaking Herman's hand again. Charlotte tried unlocking the front door, but found her key didn't fit. She pulled out her phone, dialed the number for Gold Standard Real Estate listed on the sign, and stared at it in disbelief. Her phone was fully charged, but it seemed faulty. Darlene lent Charlotte her cell, while Gary checked the house's windows and doors. Charlotte whispered curses when the call connected. "Gold Standard Real Estate, Melissa Kalick speaking," Melissa greeted cheerfully. "This is Charlotte Jackson," Charlotte snapped. "My key doesn't work at my house." "Ah, Ronald Jackson's ex?" Melissa chirped. "Ex? Charlotte retorted. "I need to sign some paperwork," Melissa continued. "Guess what? I have clients interested in your home." "It's not for sale," Charlotte exclaimed. "So, are you buying out Mr. Jackson?" Melissa probed. "The Richmonds might be disappointed. They liked the Purcell house, too." Gary returned, confirming the house was secure. Charlotte reiterated the house wasn't for sale and called Ronnie. "You idiot," Charlotte muttered as Ronnie's voice answered. "Eccles Renovations and Remodeling." "Can we drop you somewhere?" Gary interrupted, growing impatient. "My cat," Charlotte remembered, squeezing back into the car. "Hey," Dennis answered. "It's me," Ronnie said. "He gave Samson to you?" Charlotte asked. "With Poppy, olive oil, and Blue Tool around? They'd shred that cat," Dennis snapped. "No, Dad has him. You need to get him. Dad's physical therapist is allergic." "Thank goodness," Charlotte sighed. "Thanks," Dennis continued. "Ronnie's disappearance almost bankrupted us. I secured a federal loan but had to let Fremante take it because none of us can lay ceramic tile." "Uh-huh," Charlotte interrupted. "Who else are you calling?" Darlene snapped as Charlotte dialed her dad's number. "Don't you have unlimited?" Charlotte asked. "Nope, 1,000 minutes monthly. Mr. Football used most," Darlene replied. "Last call," Charlotte assured. John angrily agreed to let her come over. Gary drove them to John Eccles' house. Darlene and Charlotte hugged, and Charlotte headed inside. "How was it?" Gary asked Darlene as she got in the car. "Disastrous," Darlene sighed. "Who'd want her?" "Not with you around," Gary joked, watching Charlotte enter. "Any money from her?" Darlene inquired. "Almost," Gary said, pulling out. "Ronnie's such a pain." "Can you hear me?" Darlene sounded frustrated. "He canceled her credit cards. She used her debit," Gary explained. "ATMs are everywhere," Darlene pointed out. "She got about $10, Gary muttered. "We need gas," Darlene stated. "With ATMs and the internet, she's fine," Gary reasoned. "Unless your football-obsessed hubby isn't hogging minutes," Darlene retorted. "Here's $20, Gary handed Darlene. "She went online," Darlene concluded. "What's the connection to ATMs?" Gary inquired as he steered into the gas station. Charlotte noticed Ronnie covered half her bill. "Just grab $10, all right? We still have the electricity bill to cover unless you've settled it already," Darlene suggested. Gary nodded and entered the adjoining convenience store. Darlene observed Gary glance at the beer cooler and then honk the car horn. Gary shot her a disapproving look through the store's window, but proceeded to the counter. "I was only getting one can," Gary claimed upon his return. "Just one?" Darlene retorted. "When was the last time you settled for just one can?" Gary mumbled. "Hey, isn't that petite lady new here? How come she has such prominent chest?" Gary commented. "She's petite, so her chest seemed larger in comparison," Darlene corrected. "Let's get that gas," Gary urged. "Fine," Darlene responded reluctantly. Amidst their argument, Charlotte endured her father's furious monologue. Since his stroke, John's language has become increasingly crude, and he didn't shy away from using derogatory and harmful words to describe those around him. "When was the last time you looked in the mirror?" John questioned. "Fat pig. That face looks like it was doused and saved with an ice pick," John went on. "Dad!" Charlotte exclaimed, deeply hurt. "Turning 40? So what? Women hit 40 every day," John grumbled. "But not all betray their family at 40. John gestured towards legal documents on the coffee table. Just then, Samson entered the room. "You'll need a lawyer, and I have to clean that cat litter box," John snapped. "Good Lord. I don't know what that animal eats, but it stinks to high heaven," John muttered. "You're back in your old room," John said tersely. "I hope betraying us was worth it. Do you hear me? I hope it was. 40 years old and still making foolish choices." Later that night, lying in her childhood bed, Charlotte gazed at the wallpaper she and her mother had chosen when she was 8. Samson remained still as Charlotte switched off the light, staring into the darkness. The week of her 40th birthday had begun on a high note. The flight to Vegas was smooth, Charlotte recalled, watching the city lights emerge below. After checking into their hotel, Charlotte and Darlene tried their luck at the roulette table before opting for dinner. Charlotte felt humiliated when a waiter informed her credit card was declined. The second met the same fate. The manager brought out her third card with a stern expression. Charlotte tried her debit card, which thankfully went through. Upon checking her bank, She discovered her balance had been halved. Both she and Darlene blamed Ronnie Jackson, feeling he had overstepped. Way overstepped. "Come on, Darlene," Darlene urged. "We're in Vegas. We can't let this setback spoil our fun, right?" However, watching Darlene lose $300 at the blackjack table dimmed the evening's excitement a bit. "That was Charlotte's $300, Darlene muttered. Charlotte struck up a conversation with a handsome young man at a bar, 25-year-old David Daltrey, and they headed to her room. "It was a brief 4 minutes, Charlotte," Darlene quipped. Charlotte caught David attempting to snatch her wallet from her purse. Darlene lamented her $100 daily limit. "Lady Luck wasn't on Darlene's side this trip," Charlotte joked. "Darlene's $100 seemed to vanish as soon as she left the hotel room." "On Tuesday evening, my birthday, I approached another young man," Charlotte remembered. He smirked and said, "Lady, if I wanted closeness with a 300-pound woman, I'd be home with my wife." He then suggested a blind convention nearby, mocking my appearance. Feeling hurt, Charlotte took the elevator to their room. Seeing the "Do Not Disturb" sign, she groaned and spent hours in the lobby coffee shop. Eventually, she messaged Darlene about returning. Back in her room after a shower, Charlotte wore hot lingerie and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She noticed Ronnie hadn't called or texted for her birthday. Tracy didn't call either, but sent a birthday text. Checking her phone, Charlotte felt the sting of her husband's neglect. Yet she appreciated birthday wishes from Dennis, Brian, and Paul. The next morning, Darlene grumbled about the budget, hinting she paid for their flight and hotel. By Saturday, Charlotte contemplated ending her relationship with Darlene due to her constant complaints. But with Darlene holding their airline tickets, Charlotte stayed quiet. Now in her childhood room, Charlotte sighed deeply. Her birthday month was far from a celebration. Jim Runkles, recommended by Freddie Baxter from the Garland County Public Library, reviewed the papers from Penny Barnes's office. He then delivered a blunt assessment. "He gets half, you get half. The house must be sold, with profits split evenly. Expenses are shared. Despite his unemployment, he isn't seeking child support," Jim stated. "But I don't want a divorce," Charlotte protested. "I don't want to lose my home. I don't want to miss Jackson." "It doesn't change the facts," Jim responded. "One person wants a divorce, and that can lead to it." "Can we get a consultation?" Charlotte asked. "We can request one," Jim confirmed, and Charlotte smiled. "I'll call Penny's office." Listening to Jim, Charlotte glanced at his book titles, hearing mostly "uh-huh" and from him. "All right, Mrs. Jackson, here's the issue," Jim stated, setting his phone on the table. "I'm paying you to avoid issues," Charlotte responded, gripping her purse firmly. "Miss Barnes doesn't know where her client is. Your husband came, settled her fee, and departed," Jim relayed. "She only possesses his email address." "Is that essential?" "It's her sole means to reach him. And no, she won't disclose the email. It's protected by attorney-client privilege," Jim clarified. "Oh," Charlotte murmured, settling back in her chair. "Ronnie informed Miss Barnes that henceforth your daughter will cover her tuition and dorm costs," Jim added. He mentioned something about initiating new traditions. "Do you grasp what he's implying?" Charlotte inquired. "No," Charlotte whispered. "But I suspect Tracy might." Charlotte bypassed her 41st birthday, dressing for work and leaving her room. John remained absorbed, hands limp on his lap, when his daughter planted a kiss on his cheek. "Anything you need before I head out?" Charlotte queried. "No," John mumbled. "All right, I'll depart. Take care of Samson, all right?" Charlotte endeavored to inject cheer into her voice. "Everything's fine. My 2 main guys will be good. Got it?" John responded, his words interspersed with grunts and barks. Charlotte commuted to work, following her familiar route from her dad's residence to the library. Her phone buzzed, but she waited until parking to check. "Happy birthday," flashed on her screen. "Thanks, Tracy," Charlotte responded flatly. "Thrilled for my birthday, just brimming with joy." Still, she acknowledged Tracy's greeting. Despite shedding 25 pounds since turning 40, Charlotte's transformation went unnoticed. She felt overlooked since Ronnie's departure. Shortly after Ronnie exited, Charlotte discerned the nature of Darlene and Gary's open marriage. Financial constraints bound them, leading to a loveless coexistence in a trailer as mere roommates. Darlene and Gary lacked affectionate gestures. Charlotte recalled Ronnie's warmth and kisses, especially after she cooked him a meal. However, after announcing her solo Vegas trip for her 40th, Ronnie's affection waned. Their last encounter ended with Ronnie evading her kiss. An hour post Tracy's text, Charlotte's phone rang. Reading a message from her boss questioning her tardiness, she disembarked from her car, dazed, and approached her workplace's rear entrance. Tracy received a thank you text from her mom for the birthday wishes. followed by a picture of a brown-haired little girl gazing back at her. Antoinette Barbara Jackson, weighing 6 pounds, 4 ounces, and measuring 17 inches, checked a text from her father's phone. Tracy found it ironic that her mom and younger sister shared a birthday. She doubted her mom would see the humor, or if her dad even remembered. "Is this Shannon Parquet? Becky McMahon here," a brunette stated over the phone. "We offer carpets, tiles, hardwoods, and laminate flooring." "Hey, Shorty," a voice teased on the line. "Pardon me," Ronnie Jackson told a couple choosing hardwood floor colors. He signaled Bobby to assist them and picked up the call. The man nodded and approached the couple. Ronnie moved to the wall phone and answered the blinking line. Scanning the trading floor, he listened attentively. He awaited news from Samuel D. about securing an exclusive flooring contract for the developer's projects. "Listening, Shorty," Ronnie greeted. "Guess what, Mr. Shorty?" Shannon's voice teased. "Looks like you and your 7 inches are making me a mom again." "Shannon, really?" Ronnie exclaimed in surprise. "Tony's still in diapers and we're expecting another?" Shannon giggled on the other end. "Where are you?" Ronnie asked. "Just left Dr. Pruitt's," Shannon replied. "Hurry over," Ronnie urged. "We're celebrating at the Stone Grill. All this talk about my figure is why we're in this situation," Shannon chuckled, pushing Tony's stroller from Alliance Square Medical Center into the Texas heat. At 4'8", she brushed her hair back and scanned her surroundings, always cautious due to her height. She faced the sun and smiled. When Ronnie told Shannon Carlisle he was leaving the gas station, she questioned his destination. Ronnie paused. "Why?" he asked. "So I can forward my last paycheck," Shannon quipped, stepping off her milk crate. "Heading somewhere warm? I'm already snowed in." "Shannon, what's a stunning girl like you doing with an old guy like me?" Ronnie teased. Ready to banter back, Shannon replied, "About 7 inches." Closing her eyes, she asked, "What color are my eyes?" "Dark brown," Ronnie answered. "I have a dimple." "On which side?" she queried, opening her eyes. "Left," he responded. "And when you smile, your right front tooth peeks out, slightly crooked," he added. "Why say goodbye?" Shannon questioned, moving from the counter. "Polly, I'm leaving." "I'm not sure," Ronnie said as Polly, hauling his 312 pounds, exited the warehouse. "Sure," Shannon grinned, taking Ronnie's hand. "Polly, I'm out." 2 hours left," Polly protested. "Feeling sick?" Shannon claimed. "Goodbye." "Ever been to Texas?" Outside Alliance Square Medical Center, Shannon whispered, "Ronnie, I love you."
Story 4.
The creaking of bed springs pierced the silence of night, pulling Ethan from his dreamless sleep. His eyes snapped open, adjusting to the darkness that blanketed their bedroom. The sound came again, rhythmic and unmistakable, accompanied by hushed moans that made his blood run cold. Something was terribly wrong in the quiet darkness of his home for a moment. He lay frozen, his mind refusing to process what his ears were telling him. The bed beside him was empty, the sheets cold where Melanie should have been. Her pillow still held the indent of her head, the faintest trace of her perfume lingering on the fabric. Another creak, another moan, and reality crashed down on him with devastating clarity. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs as he turned his head toward the sound. Moonlight filtered through the partially drawn curtains, casting angular shadows across the floor. The sounds were coming from the guest bedroom, the room Melanie had insisted on renovating just 3 months ago. Choosing every detail from the Egyptian cotton sheets to the hand-painted Italian tiles in the en-suite bathroom, the door between their bedroom and the guest room stood slightly ajar, a sliver of warm lamplight spilling through the gap. The light she'd picked out, insisting on the perfect ambience. The memory of that shopping trip now took on a darker meaning. Making his stomach turn as he pushed himself up from the bed, his bare feet made no sound on the plush carpet as he approached the door. Each step felt like moving through molasses, his body operating on autopilot while his mind screamed at him to stop, to turn back, to preserve the last fragments of his world before it shattered completely through the gap in the door. He saw them. The image burned into his retinas like acid, every detail searing itself into his memory with cruel precision. Melanie straddled a stranger in their guest bed, her head thrown back in pleasure, her long dark hair cascading down her bare back. The stranger's hands gripped her hips, and she moved above him with practiced ease, as if this wasn't the first time. As if this was just another Tuesday night for her, the intimacy of the scene struck him like a physical blow. This wasn't some drunken mistake or momentary lapse in judgment. The way they moved together spoke of familiarity, of routine. How long had this been happening? How many times had he slept unknowing on the other side of that wall while his wife betrayed him? He must have made a sound, a gasp, a growl, something, because Melanie's head snapped toward him. Their eyes met across the darkness, and what he saw in hers made his stomach turn. There was no shock, no guilt, no shame. Instead, a smile played across her lips, cruel and deliberate, like a cat that had finally decided to stop toying with its prey. "Oh," she purred, not stopping her movements. "Look who's finally awake." Her voice carried the same mocking tone she'd used countless times before when pointing out his failures, his inadequacies, his countless disappointments. The stranger beneath her tensed, trying to push her off, but Melanie held firm, her smile widening as she watched her husband's face contort with rage. "What's wrong, baby?" Her voice dripped with mock concern. "You weren't supposed to see this. Though maybe it's better that you did." She rolled her hips deliberately, drawing a groan from her lover. "You were always boring, Ethan. Maybe this will wake you up." Each word was a dagger, precisely aimed to inflict maximum damage. She'd always been good at that, at finding the exact spots where her words would cut deepest. But something was different this time. Instead of wounding him, her words fed the fury building in his chest, stoking it into an inferno that threatened to consume them both through the red haze descending over his vision. Ethan watched as the stranger finally managed to push Melanie aside, scrambling to his feet. He grabbed for his clothes, but Ethan was already moving, years of suppressed rage crystallizing into a single moment of pure, devastating action. His fist connected with the man's face with a sickening crunch that reverberated through his arm. Teeth and blood sprayed across the bedroom carpet as the stranger crumpled, howling in pain. The sound of breaking bone and cartilage sent a savage thrill through Ethan's body, awakening something primal that had been dormant for far too long. Jesus Christ! The man clutched his ruined mouth, blood seeping between his fingers and staining the expensive cream-colored carpet, the one Melanie had specially ordered from some exclusive boutique in Milan. "You're fucking crazy!" The sight of blood spreading across the imported fibers barely registered in Ethan's mind. His attention was fixed on Melanie, who had scrambled off the bed, the sheets tangling around her legs as she backed toward the door. For the first time, fear flickered across her face. The confident mask slipped, revealing something vulnerable underneath as she watched the transformation of her usually passive husband. "Get out!" Ethan growled at the bleeding man, his voice hardly recognizable as his own. "Get out before I finish what I started." The stranger didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his clothes, leaving a trail of blood drops on the carpet as he fled. The front door slammed somewhere below, the sound echoing through the house like a gunshot that Melanie's composure cracked entirely as she found herself alone with her husband. The fear in her eyes sparked something dark inside him, something that fed on her sudden vulnerability. She'd spent years making him feel small, weak, inadequate. Now the tables had turned, and he could see the realization dawning in her eyes. "Ethan," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "You're overreacting. If you just overreacting?" The word came out as a harsh laugh. "You bring a man into our home, into our bed, and I'm overreacting?" He advanced on her, and she retreated further, her back pressing against the doorframe. The silk robe she'd hastily grabbed did little to cover her, and goosebumps rose on her exposed skin. Whether from the cold or fear, he couldn't tell. "Didn't care? It's not like that," she tried again, her eyes darting between his face and his blood-stained fist. "You don't understand. You never understand anything. That's always been your problem, hasn't it? So wrapped up in your own little world, never seeing what was right in front of you." The words were familiar. The same cutting tone, the same calculated insults she'd wielded like weapons throughout their marriage. But they didn't land the way they used to. Instead of cutting him down, they fed the rage burning in his chest. "No more games, Melanie," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "No more manipulation. No more lies." She must have seen something in his eyes, something that told her this time was different. This time, her words wouldn't save her. This time, He wasn't going to back down and retreat into himself like he always had before. You think I'm pathetic? He advanced another step. You think I'm boring? Another step, and she flinched away from him. All these years, making me feel worthless, making me doubt myself. Was this your plan all along? To break me down piece by piece? Melanie's eyes widened as she realized her usual tactics weren't working. The fear in her expression deepened, becoming something primal and desperate. She glanced toward the hallway, calculating her chances. Don't, he warned, but she was already moving. Melanie bolted from the room, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood floors as she ran for the stairs. Her voice echoed back to him, shrill with panic and spite, bouncing off the walls of their home. The home he'd bought for her, renovated for her, turned into a shrine to her endless demands. You're nothing, Ethan. You hear me? Nothing. Her words rang through the house, punctuated by the thunder of her footsteps on the stairs. You'll never be enough for anyone, let alone me. The words should have cut him like they always did, should have sent him retreating into himself like a wounded animal. Instead, they fed the inferno raging in his chest. His eyes landed on the bedside table, where a heavy brass candlestick stood among the carefully curated decorative pieces Melanie had chosen. His hand closed around the candlestick, a wedding gift from her parents, who'd never thought he was good enough for their precious daughter. The metal was cold against his palm, its weight promising. This wasn't about passion anymore. This wasn't even about the betrayal he'd witnessed. This was about justice for every slight, every manipulation, every moment of humiliation she'd put him through. Melanie! His voice bounced off the walls, filling the house with his rage. We're not done talking. He could hear her moving below, heading for the basement, her domain, where she spent hours doing God knows what. She'd never let him down there, always had some excuse why he needed to stay upstairs. Well, that was about to change. His feet carried him toward the stairs, each step measured and deliberate. The candlestick swung at his side, heavy with purpose. Melanie's insults still rang in his ears, but they didn't wound him anymore. Instead, they fueled his determination. No more weakness. No more backing down. No more accepting her cruel games and manipulation. The basement door stood open ahead of him, darkness yawning beyond like a mouth waiting to swallow them both. The air grew colder as he approached, carrying the musty scent of concrete and hidden secrets. Somewhere in that darkness, Melanie was waiting. Somewhere in that darkness, their story would reach its end. Ethan descended the first step, then another, the candlestick cold and heavy in his grip. Whatever happened next would define them both. No more games. No more manipulation. No more pretending this time. Things would be different this time. He would make sure of it. The basement air hit Ethan like a physical wall as he descended the stairs, each step creaking beneath his weight. The temperature dropped with every foot downward, and the musty scent of concrete and hidden things filled his nostrils. The candlestick felt heavier in his hand now, its brass surface catching what little light filtered down from above. Running away again, Melanie? His voice bounced off the concrete walls, coming back to him distorted and strange. Isn't that what you always do when things get real? Only silence answered him, broken by the soft hum of the water heater in the corner. The darkness seemed to pulse with each beat of his heart, shadows shifting and dancing at the edges of his vision. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, its weak light barely penetrating the gloom. His foot hit the concrete floor, and memories crashed over him like a wave. The day they'd bought the house, Melanie had immediately claimed the basement as her private space. I need somewhere to be creative, she'd said, her voice honey-sweet. Somewhere I can express myself without interference. You mean somewhere you can hide your secrets? Ethan called into the darkness, moving forward cautiously. Like all those credit card statements I found last month? Those hotel receipts? A soft sound came from somewhere in the shadows, fabric rustling against concrete, perhaps, or someone trying very hard to stay still. The noise drew him deeper into the basement, past the expensive wine racks she'd insisted on installing. Remember what you said when I found those, Melanie? You looked me right in the eye and said, a woman needs her mysteries. Was that what all this was to you? Just another mystery? The memory of that conversation rose unbidden in his mind. She'd been wearing that blue silk blouse he'd bought her for Christmas. The one she'd later told her friends was sweet but cheap. Her perfectly manicured nails had drummed against the kitchen counter as she'd stared him down. "You're being paranoid again, Ethan," she'd said, her voice dripping with condescension. "This is exactly why I need my own space, my own life. You're suffocating me with all these questions." Questions, he spat now, moving past shelves lined with her collected treasures. Art supplies she'd never used, books she'd never read, all carefully arranged for show. Basic questions about our marriage, about where our money was going. That was suffocating to you. Something crashed to his left, a box falling, or maybe something being knocked over. Ethan spun toward the sound, the candlestick raised. His eyes were adjusting to the dim light now, picking out details he'd never noticed before. Scratch marks scored the concrete floor, leading toward the far corner where Melanie kept her storage closet. "You want to know what's suffocating?" he continued, following the marks. "Living with someone who turns every conversation into a game. Someone who treats marriage like a performance art piece." His foot caught on something, an overturned chair, one of the antiques she'd bought at that pretentious auction house in Boston. The memory of that day surfaced, sharp and clear. Melanie charming the auctioneer, making sure everyone saw her as the sophisticated collector while Ethan stood in the background, just another prop in her carefully curated life. "I had to hear it from Richard, you know," he called out, steadying himself against a shelf. "At the Thompsons' dinner party last month. He pulled me aside, said he'd seen you at the Grand Hotel downtown. Said you weren't alone. The silence that followed was different, heavier somehow, charged with unspoken truths." Richard's voice echoed in his memory, thick with whiskey and misplaced sympathy. "Look, man, I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but someone had to. She's making a fool of you. I defended you," Ethan continued, his voice rising. "Told him he must have been mistaken, that my wife would never. But he wasn't the only one, was he? They all knew. Every single one of our friends knew what you were doing." The metallic tang in the air grew stronger as he moved deeper into the basement. Something about the smell nagged at him, trying to trigger a warning in the primitive part of his brain, but he pushed the thought aside. His focus narrowed to the storage closet ahead, its door slightly ajar, swaying gently in a breeze that shouldn't exist this far underground. The basement shadows seemed to deepen as Ethan approached the storage closet, memories rising unbidden in his mind. 3 years ago, when they'd first moved in, Melanie had spent weeks organizing this space, arranging everything just so. He remembered standing at the top of the stairs, watching her disappear down here for hours at a time. "I need to catalog everything properly," she'd said, brushing off his offers to help. "You wouldn't understand my system. You just mess it up." Now, looking at the scattered boxes and displaced items, her precious system lay in ruins. A shelf had been knocked askew, its contents spilled across the floor. Expensive art supplies, never used, leather-bound journals, never written in, cameras and craft materials, all for show. "Your system," he called out, kicking aside a fallen box. "Everything was always about your system, your rules, your way of doing things. God forbid anyone else have input." His voice bounced off the concrete walls, coming back to him twisted and strange. "Remember the dinner party last Christmas? When I tried to help in the kitchen?" The memory surfaced with painful clarity. Melanie standing in their custom-designed kitchen, her face a mask of controlled fury as she'd gripped the edge of the marble countertop. "Just go sit down, Ethan. You're embarrassing both of us." "You made sure everyone knew how useless I was," he continued, moving closer to the storage closet. "Told that cute little story about how I couldn't even boil water properly. Had them all laughing at me. Always had to be the star of the show, didn't you?" His foot crunched on something broken glass scattered across the concrete floor. Bending down, he picked up a shard, turning it over in the dim light. It came from one of her precious vintage perfume bottles, the one she'd collected obsessively during their trips to Europe. Paris rose in his mind, their 3rd anniversary. She dragged him from shop to shop, ignoring his suggestions, dismissing his attempts to share in her enthusiasm. "Just hold the bags, honey. That's what you're good at." "I tried so hard to make you happy," he said, dropping the glass shard. It shattered further, the sound sharp in the basement's heavy air. Bought you everything you wanted. Gave you this house, this basement, all the space you needed. But it was never enough, was it? The metallic smell grew stronger as he neared the storage closet. Something about it triggered a warning in his brain, but he pushed the thought aside. The door swayed slightly on its hinges. That impossible breeze, carrying whispers of conversations past, their last real fight echoed in his mind. 2 weeks ago, standing in their bedroom while she'd packed for another business trip. I saw the text on your phone, he'd said. Holding up the evidence, she hadn't even flinched, just kept folding her designer clothes into her expensive suitcase. Going through my phone now? That's sad, Ethan. Even for you. Sad? I'm sad for wanting to know why my wife is texting another man at 3 in the morning. She looked at him then, her eyes cold and amused. You really want to do this? Fine. Yes, I text other men. Yes, I meet them. Yes, I fuck them. Because you. She'd step closer, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing his chest. You're not enough. You've never been enough. You're just convenient. The rage that had filled him then was nothing compared to what he felt now, standing in the basement's oppressive darkness. The candlestick felt heavier in his hand, its brass surface reflecting the weak light from above. Convenient. He spat the word into the darkness. That's what you called me. Convenient. Like a goddamn appliance. Something to pay the bills and hold your shopping bags. A sound came from behind the storage closet door, fabric rustling against wood, or maybe someone trying very hard to stay still. The door's slight movement seemed to mock him, inviting him to discover what lay beyond. The scratch marks on the floor seemed to lead directly to the closet door, like arrows pointing the way to some grim revelation. Ethan's mind flashed back to the night he'd first noticed changes in the basement boxes rearranged. Things moved from their usual places. When he'd mentioned it, Melanie had laughed. You're being paranoid again, she'd said, her voice dripping with that familiar condescension. This is my space, remember? I move things how I want them. You don't get a say down here. Your space, he muttered now, running his free hand along the wall as he approached the closet. Everything was always your space. The house, our friends, our whole life, all carefully arranged to your liking. Where was my space, Melanie? Their 5th anniversary dinner flashed through his mind. The restaurant she'd chosen, the friends she'd invited, all of it orchestrated to show off her perfect life. He'd tried to give a toast, to say something meaningful about their marriage. Oh, honey, she cut him off, patting his hand like he was a child. Let me handle the speeches. You know how you get when you're nervous. Then, to their guests, isn't he adorable when he tries? You never missed a chance, he called out, his voice echoing in the basement's heavy air. Never wasted an opportunity to cut me down, to remind everyone that I was just, what did you call it? The supporting cast in your one-woman show. The metallic smell grew stronger as he neared the closet. Something about it nagged at his consciousness, trying to trigger a warning, but the rage burning in his chest drowned out everything else. The door continued its gentle swaying, taunting him with glimpses of darkness beyond. Their last vacation played through his mind the Amalfi Coast from months ago. He'd found a small, family-owned restaurant away from the tourist traps, wanting to surprise her with something authentic and intimate. Really, Ethan? She'd stood in the doorway, nose wrinkled in disgust. This is what you choose? God, you can't even plan a proper dinner without embarrassing me. Everything I did was wrong, he said, reaching for the closet door. Everything I tried was a mistake. Nothing was ever good enough for you. The smell was overwhelming now, copper and salt, and something else, something his mind refused to name. The door seemed to pulse in the dim light, its movements hypnotic, drawing him closer. 2 nights ago, she'd stood in their kitchen, laughing at his accusations about the credit card statements he'd found. You really want to know where I was those nights? Who I was with? Are you sure your fragile ego can handle it? You thought I was weak, he said, his fingers brushing the door's surface. Thought I would just keep taking it, keep swallowing every insult, every humiliation. But you were wrong. The scratch marks on the floor ended at the threshold, like desperate fingers had tried to grip the concrete. The door's movement had an almost organic quality now, as if it were breathing, waiting to reveal its secrets. "No more games, Melanie," he growled, gripping the door handle. "No more manipulation. No more hiding in your precious private space. It's time we had an honest conversation about our marriage." The door resisted slightly, then yielded to his touch. The darkness beyond seemed absolute, hungry, waiting to swallow him whole. The candlestick felt like lead in his hand, its weight a promise of confrontation to come. Whatever waited behind this door would change everything. Whatever secrets Melanie had hidden in her private sanctuary were about to come to light. The thought should have frightened him, should have made him hesitate. Instead, he felt only a cold certainty as he pulled the door wider, ready to face whatever truth lay waiting in the darkness beyond. The storage closet door swung open with a finality that seemed to echo through the basement. The weak light from the single bulb spilled into the darkness beyond, revealing what waited there. The candlestick slipped from Ethan's nerveless fingers, hitting the concrete floor with a sound like a bell tolling. Melanie hung before him, her feet dangling above the floor, her eyes wide and staring. The silk robe he'd bought her last Christmas, the one she'd sneered at in front of their friends, draped around her like a funeral shroud. The rope creaked softly against the wooden beam, the only sound in the sudden, devastating silence. "No." The word escaped him without conscious thought. "No, this isn't how this ends." His mind refused to process what his eyes were seeing. This had to be another one of her games, another manipulation. Any moment now, she'd laugh that cutting laugh of hers, tell him how pathetic he looked standing there with his mouth open, but the silence stretched on, broken only by the soft creaking of rope against wood. The basement's cold air pressed against him like a physical weight. Carrying that metallic smell, he now recognized the copper tang of blood from where the rope had cut into her neck. "Is this your final act?" His voice came out rough, angry. "Your grand finale? Couldn't stand losing control? Could you?" He stepped closer, forced himself to really look at her. Her perfect makeup was smeared tears, he realized. Her last moments hadn't been as controlled as she'd wanted them to appear. The thought brought him no satisfaction that a memory surfaced their first real fight after the honeymoon. She'd locked herself in their bathroom, threatening to swallow a bottle of pills. When he'd broken down the door in a panic, she'd been sitting on the edge of the tub, perfectly composed, the unopened bottle in her hand. "You should have seen your face," she'd laughed. "God, you're so easy to manipulate. No wonder I picked you." "Is that what this is?" he demanded now, gesturing at her lifeless form. "Another manipulation? Another way to make me dance to your tune?" His foot kicked something, a piece of paper, folded with precise creases, lying beneath her dangling feet. Even in death, Melanie's attention to detail remained immaculate. The stationery was expensive, the kind she'd ordered from that boutique in Paris. She'd always insisted on having the finest things. Even for this, her final message, his hands trembled as he picked up the note. Part of him wanted to tear it up unread, deny her this last chance to wound him. But he knew he couldn't. Even now, even after everything, she held power over him. The paper unfolded with a crisp sound that seemed too loud in the basement's heavy silence. Her handwriting was perfect. Of course it was. Every loop and curve carefully controlled, just like everything else about her. "I couldn't live with what I've done," he read aloud, his voice echoing in the concrete tomb she'd chosen for her final performance. "I was never enough for you, and I thought I could fill the emptiness. Forgive me." The words hit him like physical blows. Each carefully chosen phrase, each deliberate sentiment designed to twist the knife one final time. Even in death, she'd found a way to make this about his failures, his inadequacies. Ethan read the note again, the words burning themselves into his brain. Each perfectly formed letter seemed to mock him, to challenge the reality of what he'd witnessed upstairs. The rage that had driven him down here curdled in his chest, transforming into something colder, more bitter. "Never enough for me?" He looked up at Melanie's body, searching her lifeless face for answers. "You're the one who brought another man into our bed. You're the one who spent years tearing me down. And now you're trying to make this my fault?" Their wedding day flashed through his mind. Melanie radiant in white, her smile dazzling as she'd recited her vows. I promise to love and cherish you, she'd said, her voice carrying clearly through the church. Later, at the reception, she'd pulled him aside, her grip painfully tight on his arm. Don't you dare embarrass me with your speech, she'd hissed, then immediately switched back to her brilliant smile as guests approached. It had been his first glimpse of the woman behind the mask, but he'd ignored it, too caught up in the fantasy she'd crafted. Everything was a performance with you, he said, crushing the note in his fist. Every moment, every word, every gesture, all calculated for maximum effect. Even this. He gestured at her hanging form. Your grand finale. The basement's silence pressed in around him, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. The single bulb cast stark shadows across Melanie's face, highlighting the trails her tears had left through her perfect makeup. She cried at the end not for him, he realized, but for herself. For the loss of control, the shattering of her carefully constructed image. Remember what you said on our first anniversary? His voice echoed off the concrete walls. When I surprised you with that weekend in Vermont, you waited until we were at dinner, surrounded by your friends, to tell everyone how quaint it was. How sweet that I'd tried so hard to plan something special. The memory burned like acid, her friends laughing, exchanging knowing looks while she continued, her voice dripping with fake affection. He even packed matching sweaters for us. Can you believe it? Like we were in some Hallmark movie. You made sure everyone knew how pathetic I was. He continued, pacing before her suspended form. How lucky you were to have such an understanding wife. Someone who could appreciate what did you call them? My earnest little attempts at romance. Another memory surfaced. Their last Christmas together. He'd spent months secretly taking cooking classes, wanting to surprise her with a homemade meal. She'd walked into the kitchen, taken one look at his efforts, and picked up the phone to order takeout. We can't serve this to our guests, darling, she'd said, not even trying to hide her disdain. What would people think? That was always the question with you, wasn't it? Ethan stopped pacing, faced her directly. What would people think? Everything had to be perfect, had to fit your narrative. And when things didn't go according to your script, he trailed off, looking at the rope around her neck. How many times had she threatened this over the years? Each argument that didn't go her way. Each time he'd tried to stand up for himself, she'd retreat to their bedroom, emerge with tears artfully streaking her makeup, holding a bottle of pills or a razor blade. You used it to control me. He realized, the words bitter in his mouth. Every threat, every dramatic gesture, they were all just tools to keep me in line. But this time, he looked up at her face, saw the fear frozen there in her final moments. This time was different. This time you knew you'd lost control. The crumpled note in his hand seemed to burn against his skin. Ethan smoothed it out, reading those careful words one more time. Each sentence was a masterpiece of manipulation, crafted to inflict maximum damage. She'd known exactly what she was doing. Even at the end, I couldn't live with what I've done, he quoted, his voice harsh in the basement's heavy air. But you could live with everything else? Couldn't you? The affairs, the lies, the constant manipulation. You could live with destroying every shred of self-respect I had. Their 5th anniversary rose in his mind, the dinner party she'd thrown, inviting all their friends to witness her latest performance. She'd stood at the head of the table, wine glass raised in an elegant hand. Marriage is about compromise, she'd said, her voice carrying that perfect note of affectionate condescension. About accepting each other's flaws. And my darling Ethan has given me so many opportunities to practice acceptance. The gathered guests had laughed, exchanging knowing looks while he sat there, smile fixed in place, dying inside. She'd reached across the table, patted his hand like you would a child's. But that's what makes him perfect for me, she continued. He tries so hard, doesn't he? Even when he fails, especially when he fails, he just keeps trying. It's almost inspiring, in a way. You made me doubt everything about myself, Ethan said now, staring up at her lifeless form. Every decision, every thought, every feeling, you twisted them all until I couldn't trust my own judgment. And now this note. He clenched his fist around the paper. One final twist of the knife. The basement silence seemed to deepen, pressing against him like a physical weight. The single bulb cast Melanie's shadow on the concrete wall, stretched and distorted, a final reminder of how appearances could deceive. In death, as in life, she'd made sure to leave her mark. "Forgive me," he read the last line again, tasting its bitter irony. "That's what you want? Forgiveness? After everything you've done, everything you've put me through, you think you deserve forgiveness?" Their last real conversation echoed in his mind just 3 weeks ago, after he'd discovered yet another credit card statement hidden in her desk. She'd looked at him with those cold eyes, not even bothering to deny it anymore. "You want to know the truth, Ethan? Fine. Yes, I spend money on other men. Yes, I meet them in hotels. Yes, I laugh about you with them. Because you..." She'd stepped closer, jabbing her finger into his chest. "You're nothing. You've always been nothing. Just a convenience, a backdrop for my real life. And now you want me to forgive you." The words came out as a harsh laugh. "To carry the guilt for your choices? To spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have prevented this?" He looked at the note one last time, then deliberately tore it to pieces. The sound of ripping paper echoed through the basement like gunshots. Each tear felt like breaking another link in the chain she'd wrapped around him over the years. The fragments fluttered to the floor, joining the other debris of their shattered marriage. Above him, Melanie's body swayed slightly in the still air, a macabre pendulum marking the end of their toxic dance. Her final performance had reached its conclusion, but this time, he refused to play his assigned role. Ethan sank to the floor, his back against the cold concrete wall. The basement's silence wrapped around him like a shroud, broken only by the soft creaking of rope and the sound of his own breathing. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He simply sat, surrounded by the torn pieces of her last manipulation. As the reality of what had happened settled over him like dust, and in the end, Melanie had tried to win one final victory. Her carefully crafted note, her staged death scene, all designed to ensure he would carry the weight of her choices forever. But as he sat there in the darkness she'd created, Ethan felt something unexpected: freedom. The guilt she'd tried to lay on him with her final words fell away, revealing the truth beneath. The darkness pressed in around him, and Ethan let it come. There would be questions later, police, investigators, family members demanding answers. But for now, there was only silence, and the bitter knowledge that even in death, Melanie had tried to write the ending to their story. This time, though, he wouldn't let her final lie take root. The single bulb flickered overhead, casting shifting shadows on the concrete walls. In its unsteady light, the fragments of Melanie's note lay scattered like fallen leaves, their careful words now meaningless. She had lived by manipulation, died by manipulation, and tried to ensure her legacy would be one final, devastating lie. But Ethan remained unbroken, unforgiven, and most importantly, unbowed by her last attempt at control. The darkness of the basement pressed in around him, but for the first time in years, he could breathe freely. Melanie's performance was over, and with it, her power to shape his reality.